Good morning. Hello. It's totally fine. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the first Wellness Committee. I wanted to just start by talking about an agenda. Wanted to do introductions, just do a quick welcoming, talk a little bit about the changes that will be happening for this year when it comes to the Wellness Committee, as well as what we had done within the past, what last year's Wellness Committee initiatives were, talk a little bit about where we came from, where we got to, meet Ken, the service dog from West, and then talk about initiatives this year and how we want to structure the Wellness Committee moving forward. There is a quick discussion about COOTH, which is funded by the Human Services Department that I wanted to gauge your interest in, and then talk about PV Power Packs when it comes to working with the high school, as well as any other items that you have today. So to get right into it, introduction. I wanted to quickly just go around. I know not everybody knows each other. I will start. My name is Erin Dreisbach. I am the Supervisor of Health and Wellness.
Kelsey Gardner, Food Service Director.
James Clune, I'm the Supervisor of Assessment, Innovation, and Engagement.
Carla Zielinski, one of the counselors at Middle School West.
Jen Moylan, MTSS Facilitator at West and Caretaker for Ken.
Joni Ducci, Director of Special Ed and hopeful caretaker of Ken.
Barb Russell, I'm the Superintendent.
Okay, I will use the microphone. All right. Thank you so much. Quick updates. We will be having meetings mostly every month, and that will be 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. So please come join if you are able. We would love to have you as we really start to talk about and dig into wellness within our PV community. To quickly discuss, last year we had identified 3 SMART goals that we were working towards for the school year. The first one was developing a medical response team within each building to respond to medical emergencies. The second one was to provide mental health resources on the PVSD. Oh, okay. I was like, oh my goodness. Mental health resources on the PVSD website, that would be accessible to the community. And then the third was piloting a facility dog at Middle School West. So with that being said, Ken is with us today. And so, yeah.
All right, well, hi, I'm Jen Moylan, and
Carla Zielinski.
we're from West. So this is Ken. He's our facility dog. Carla worked super hard to get him, and exactly what's happening around the table right now with your huge smiles is exactly what's happening at West. He was transferred to me late May, early June last year, so he spent the summer bonding with my family. We reinforced his training, and then all throughout the summer, I came in, Carla was there too, and we acclimated him to the school building and to small groups of staff. Then we had some students near the end of the summer. We created an introduction video with him, so the students were, he was exposed to all the students. I have 3 children of my own, plus a niece and a nephew that live in the backyard, and all the friends, so he was exposed to kids all summer long. And now that he's back in, we're transitioning him. He started this week. He's doing a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Thursday night kind of week. He did Arrival twice. So when the first time we did Arrival, the kids were coming in their buses around the bend, and they were looking like sleepy middle schoolers do. And then they saw him, and the eyes got bigger, and the mouth dropped, and the head came up, and they said to their friends, like, Ken's there. And then he greeted them at the front door. We've seen small groups of kids. There was I think my favorite story so far is one of our students who needs some emotional support. He's a very serious young man, and I usually see him looking very serious. And he did this day when Ken and I were walking out of our room, and he was walking out of the emotional support classroom. And he said, "Can I pet Ken?" I said, "Sure you can." And he that little smile cracked. And by the end of that minute interaction, I literally said he looks like a different kid. His face was so much more relaxed than I've ever seen him before. I truly had to do a double take for this little guy. Well, I guess he's a big guy, but so we are super grateful for this opportunity, and we thank all of you who had a part in this. Ken's been awesome for us already, and it's just the beginning.
Yeah, just extend my gratitude for all the support and from everybody here, which is why we wanted to come. And he is kind of doing a gradual ease in. So he's kind of building capacity to spend more time working with students and coming in. And we have 6 handlers at middle school, and even that we're kind of working towards slowly. So he'll be working with Jen right now exclusively, and then myself, and then gradually we add a different handler. So, yeah. We're already seeing all the promise and potential with students. He's being used each day as a check-in with the student who we had attendance issues with last year, and she's coming to school with joy every morning to help Jen with Ken.
Yeah. It's really great.
Any questions?
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thanks.
I know that you have to leave soon to get back to West. Does anybody have questions?
I just want to say thank you for coming as well. I know that it was also really a student-driven initiative as well, so we're very appreciative of that, just from a board perspective, to understand that this happened really as a result not only of your advocacy but also the students. So it's really a beautiful thing. So please keep us posted, and the video is awesome. If you have some downtime and you're not busy, you can send us more videos.
Sounds great. And thank you for bringing that up. That is true. That gives me chills when we talk about this being student-driven, and she laid the foundation for it. She planted the seed. Yeah.
Really a remarkable legacy
Yeah.
for PV. Absolutely it
Absolutely.
is. Thank you very, very much.
Enjoy
Parent-Teacher Night.
Thanks.
I think you'll be a big hit.
I think that you're going to have everything that you wanted and more in there. And I think it's already proven itself to be extremely valuable. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Have a great night.
All right, so next up is medical response teams. Just an update on where we currently are within that goal from last year. Kristen, I know you have a lot of information.
Hello, thank you. Forgive me, I'm really not good at public speaking. So this started back, idea came to me back in January of 2023. If you remember, Damar Hamlin from the Buffalo Bills went down on the field. They initiated a response to him very quickly that saved his life. So I thought, you know, we have CPR trained people in our buildings. Nurses are CPR trained. I didn't know how many other people were. So we worked to get people CPR trained last year. I believe last summer we had about 40 people CPR trained. It kind of drifted aside with other issues. I did speak with Officer Dean Miller and said maybe this is kind of on the safety side as well, and we can incorporate that with drills, with lockdown and fire drills, because it is something that you do have to drill. Just a little background on cardiac arrest. Only about 40% of people who experience an out of hospital cardiac arrest receive immediate help that they need to survive before professional help arrives. And every minute that passes without CPR reduces the likelihood of survival by 7 to 10%. And within 5 minutes, brain cells begin to die. Bystander CPR can double and even triple survival rates. And the use of AEDs increase survival rates 50 to 70%. So the quicker we can get someone on a victim and the quicker we can get an AED on them, the greater their survival rates. So there are two different types of response teams. You can have a cardiac emergency response team, which responds to cardiac events, or what I'm looking at is more of a medical response team, which responds to any medical event that can happen. It could be a student that falls and has a trauma on the playground. It could be a visiting grandparent in the building that may have a heart condition and has a heart attack. It could be a teacher. So the medical response team incorporates learning the signs and symptoms of asthma, anaphylaxis, diabetes, hypo and hyperglycemia. So that is something that with training and drills can be incorporated consistently across the district. So, you know, we have started with the AED and CPR training. There is an online program that's free, and it's called Code Anna, and it goes through different scenarios and gives information on the different things that can happen. So, you know, I always share with my staff that they can be trained on anaphylaxis to recognize anaphylactic symptoms and be trained on an EpiPen. Recognizing signs and symptoms of an asthma emergency. If something were to happen, they call the nurse. Sometimes it could take me 5 minutes to get to them, but if we have a team that can pull together quickly, we can save some time. So some of the pros of that are, you know, reducing the response time and just better coordination. So that we have the free online training, we have drills, and just consistency across the buildings.
Thank you so much. And so with that, the discussion will then become, is this something that we want to continue to pursue for this school year? when it comes to medical response teams. In talking a little bit more about what steps would look like, it would be collecting a list of staff who have been CPR trained, so we have that understanding of who has been trained, as well as then identifying team members in each building, setting time aside to train what other training needs there would be, and then just coordinating with individuals on a possible drill. So we can talk a little bit later about if this is something that we would want to continue to pursue for this year to utilize as a SMART goal when we get there. The next thing that we had did, and I don't think I can click, but there was a request for mental health resources for the community when it came to putting it on our PVSD website. And so that is something that had been done. The link is there. I don't know, Dr. Russell, if you're able to click it, or is this? Okay, perfect. And what you will see is a little blurb, as well as community members being able to click on how to find counseling within their insurance, and also the different types of counseling that is usually identified when they're looking through insurance lists, and then also how to gain medical assistance and steps for that, because a lot of times it gets really difficult to navigate, as well as the individuals that they can contact to gain better understanding and support and help when it comes to that.
When you go to the website, how deep is it? How much do you have to dig for that?
So it is,
Sometimes things are kind of buried, and so I know that link from the presentation took you right to it, but, oh, so it's under community.
it's under community, and then community health resource, or mental health community resources.
Oh, okay. Okay, so since that's great, it's very exciting. I wasn't part of that conversation, so this is the first I'm hearing about it. So has this been pushed out in any way, in any other avenue, since it was created on the website? You know, like on social media or in principal reports, or?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Counselors have access to the different documents for when there are, or social workers, psychologists, when there are parent needs, that the documents are, but not necessarily at the website. So that is definitely something that we could do.
So that would maybe be part of the community engagement piece of it then, I guess, I would assume. And then has there been, the fact that it's suicide awareness right now, I guess maybe I feel like this is a really good time to showcase it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Is this a work in progress so that it can continue to be added as far as resources? Because I saw there was a couple of them that didn't have any resources there yet.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the goal is to continue to reach out to counselors, school psychologists, social workers, and continue to look at that list. As you know, mental health continues to be updated. There's different things within the community that pop up. And so, yes, we will definitely continue to have a living, breathing list that's up to date.
You need a hand with it. I got a bunch of them. So.
All right.
So, Ms. Dreisbach, I'm wondering if maybe we prepare a brief narrative with a link to this that principals could then publish as part of their newsletters. I'd be happy to do the same in my next one. But it might be nice to showcase this and create an awareness for parents, especially because it is Suicide Prevention Month. This looks good.
Very
Perfect.
exciting.
Thank you. Awesome. So those were the goals for last year. So when looking at this year, wanted to start the discussion of how do we want to structure wellness committee for the 24-25 school year.
Can I go back to the medical response teams? I'm very intrigued by those. And I'm wondering if that goal was achieved last year or if this is still a goal in progress. Have we established the teams in each of our 7 buildings?
No, it's still a work in progress. We have not established teams. We did get as far as getting staff CPR trained, and part of the incentive was we would pay for their training if they agreed to be part of the teams. So they knew what the outcome was going to be, it just didn't get any farther than that.
So is the plan on the part of the nursing team to facilitate these teams developing and then being functional this year?
We certainly can. I didn't know what the process was as far as moving it forward and getting the right approval and getting people on board. But we can certainly work together as a nursing department and roll that out.
What kind of training time frame? In other words, in order to have it up and running, how long do you think it would probably take?
There are different
Every building.
Yeah, there's different modules to go through. So, it could take a couple of hours just to go through each module. And it's self-driven. It's, you can do it on your own time. It's not like, it has to be done in a certain amount of time. We can set goals like maybe by the end of the month, this is done. And by the end of this month, then this module's done. I haven't really looked at it close enough to say, what exactly the timelines, but it's certainly something I can look at.
So I'm curious, did you get a fair amount of interest, a diverse cross-section across the district? I mean, I appreciate the way you've structured the who, but I don't know what kind of response you got. Are people nervous about participating on a team like this, or are they comfortable?
I believe they're comfortable. I think the more we educate and make people aware of what's going on, the less apprehension they have and the less fear they have. So, I always find, if you're scared of something, I have a new allergy in my building this year. Teachers were very upset about it, but the more we learned about it and the more we learned what we can do, the fear was taken away.
Good to hear. Good to hear.
So of the 40 so far, how are they dispersed throughout the district? Are they kind of all clumped together in one spot, or what kind of representation do we have per building?
That I don't know, and I have to get that information.
Okay. It would be good to have, obviously.
And I think unless the committee has serious reservations about this, I would encourage you to let Ms. Dreisbach or Mrs. Aducci, me know what can we do to support this effort, because I appreciate that you're looking at the safety of our students from a very different angle, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Since it was on the list last year, do we have to necessarily do anything to keep it on the list and kick it into high gear?
I apologize. Could you say that again? Are you saying can we
Yeah.
continue this SMART
Right.
goal? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can. Perfect. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. Perfect. Because the next piece of this is when we're looking at structuring this year, I wanted to propose that we continue to establish committee SMART goals that align with the work of the district initiatives and areas of focus. And I wanted to see your thoughts in regards to continuing how we did last year with identifying around three goals, and really looking to do them well. And so one of them could absolutely be a continuation of the medical response teams. That could definitely be something. So thoughts on, I have another SMART goals for this current school year, and looking at some of those initiatives that we could really help within the district.
One more time. Can you say that one more time? These are the SMART goals. These are the criteria.
Correct. So the question is, does the committee want to continue to look at 2 to 3 SMART goals this year to complete as a task for this school year?
So you've essentially come pretty close to achieving 2 of the 3 goals that you set last year.
Correct.
Okay. was there conversation last year about expanding these facility dogs?
I know that there has been interest in expanding. However, I do not believe there was any conversation in how that would happen or a plan moving forward. I know that we wanted to make sure we were piloting the West facility dog before we really moved forward.
Okay.
I don't think we set a duration for a pilot or anything like that. So, I mean, that was a great, I mean, it's only the third week of school, so I really appreciated that there was such good feedback. Not that there wouldn't have been, but, so maybe could that stay on as a SMART goal to maybe add another one at either, I don't know, would you want to do it at another level, or would you add one to, like, what would the goal be, I guess, is my question.
There was discussion last year that when we first started talking about it, and then various different times,
Yeah.
the goal ultimately was to have one in every building.
Right.
But we wanted to see how this would go this year, not necessarily the whole year, because there's no question it's going to be a huge hit.
Right.
I would love it to see it in every single building, but I don't know that we would necessarily need to jump in that fast.
Or maybe pace it.
Yeah.
That's what I mean about, would you add one at a different level? Like, how would you, it's hard, you know, we have 4 elementary schools, right? So if you add one at the elementary school level, then does he visit, like, does he have floater dog? You know, I don't know how that would work per se, but I think that because there are 6 other buildings, we should have a conversation maybe about pacing it.
Yeah, I wonder if we can talk to principals and maybe they survey their staff to see if there's a building that's more interested than another at the elementary level. I don't know that shifting the dog around is healthy for the dog because the dog becomes
Stressful in the
attached,
car.
right, to the
Yeah,
care
right.
handler and the community. But maybe what we could do is, I mean, I do appreciate gathering some of the data, qualitative as well as quantitative data, having the dog, and then I wonder where the interest exists in our district among other buildings, principals and staff. Are they really interested in this? Do they see the benefit? Go with the goers kind of approach? Could be a consideration.
And timing wise, I know there was some like ramp up to Ken being available and then him having his foundational training. So I know it was like towards the end of May. I don't know how much of that was the timing of approval versus Ken's timing. So maybe based on that, we can figure out like when do we have to have approval for another, like when's the timing of that? Is that the spring, or that gives more time to see how Ken's doing?
Well, the what was taking place last year is the approval until we had every approval in order.
Right.
They couldn't start the process of looking for
Oh.
one. So
Okay.
when they started looking, what she does is she selects the dog appropriate for the build or for the location in the building that they're going through. Carla was instrumental in trying to work with her. So it's not a long process
Yeah.
necessarily, but it is something that in order to have one ready to roll for, say, next school year,
Right.
it would need to happen in the fall.
Months. Yeah.
after-
Oh, in the fall. Oh, now.
Sometime, yeah, in the
Oh,
fall.
okay. Yeah, I wasn't part of any of the, that's so interesting. So that's, I mean, by the time I found out about it, we were getting Ken, kind of, you know? So, okay, that makes sense to
Yeah,
me.
it took probably 2 months for them to locate Ken
Okay.
as being the dog.
Okay,
that
to
they
find him
wanted to
first,
choose.
okay.
Yeah. Well, it's not so much finding him, just finding the right mix as far as the personality, the type of dog it's going to be, what their background might be. So,
Sure.
it's like my puppy.
Yeah, right, okay.
So I think this gets into, you know, what the discussion we're having around the number of goals, or actually how we're looking at goals, because so we have things which have already stretched over more than 1 year. So I don't know if when we look at goals, we're looking at yearly goals, we're just looking at the things we want to do in the time they're going to take, and then you set those goals based on that, and they're not necessarily annual goals, but they're programmatic goals.
I definitely hear what you're saying. For the facility dog discussion, I think, you know, when we're looking at SMART goals, there is definitely, it's not only specific, but it also identifies a timeline. So my thought is we could definitely get principals' feedback, staff feedback in regards to some data, and then from there identify a plan moving forward. You know, whether it be a 5-year plan. I'm not sure if we want to wait, but whatever that plan would be, a plan, and then from there we could always look at that goal for this school year. So we could do that.
From a specific standpoint, could we look at the idea of finding out that information over the course of this month so that the next meeting we would have the information and can make a little bit more of a judgment call at that point?
Yes, I think that absolutely could. We could definitely make sure that we have that data so that we can look at it.
Because I'm thinking the facility dog might be, depending on how many schools are interested in having the dog, that could be a 5-year plan or a 6-year plan, because we have 6 schools that don't have one. And if every school wants one, that's going to take some time. So I think, like Don said, getting that information from the schools and who's interested in the facility dog would be very helpful, because I think is a wonderful idea.
I know this is kind of a pie in the sky kind of a comment, but is it possible that we could look at all elementary schools, then all middle schools, and then the high school, and make it a 3-year plan?
That's a very good question. So what I can make sure that we'll reach out to principals and at least start that data collection, and then we can come together to really identify what is that going to look like. I know right now, I think it will be easier. I'm saying I can think because I don't know, 100%. But once you pilot something and you kind of figure out the ups and downs, you can then have an easier time in knowing what to expect. So there is a possibility that we wouldn't have to do 6 years for a dog at each building. There could definitely be opportunity to have more buildings be able to receive a dog depending on just the logistics. So I think that's awesome feedback and input, and we can definitely continue to discuss, because I also agree. I think it is so amazing that we were able to get a facility dog at West, and I just see so many benefits when it comes to being able to have that. I don't want to say therapy, but sometimes just petting a dog can be therapy. It's so it's therapeutic.
Erin, could you just a refresh really quickly? So, how did we pay for Ken?
So the foundation is actually raising money to offset the cost for Ken.
To offset, okay.
Yeah, so we laid out the money originally. Mr. Creedon had actually worked to set aside some money in what's called an in and out account. That are monies that...
So that's the building budget.
Right, and it must benefit students. Excuse me. And then the foundation is working to raise money to support it this year and pay back.
Okay, and I did remember that. I just want to like for the edification of the record as we talk about it, the foundation is so generous to us, and I just want to make sure that, that's all part of the conversation too.
Well, there was also, in some of the other schools that they were visiting and looking at to see what the facility dogs looked like, most of them would do like fundraisers during the year for the dog. So it ended up not costing
The individual
anything.
school itself, yeah.
Yeah, and because everybody loved the animal.
It's easy to love a
and,
dog, right?
Yeah,
Sure.
so it ended up to where most of them were not having to pay anything from the district. It was coming out of the
Yeah.
generosity of the parents.
That's fantastic. I mean, and that's really how the foundation money comes about, right? So, I mean, I guess I just wanted it to be part of, I don't see cost as a barrier. I just think it should be part of the conversation as we talk about rollout and things like that there's a plan about fundraising per building in place and all of those different things.
And I know that Mrs. Zielinski worked diligently to start to organize, and the facility dog company that West went with was very helpful in pointing them in the direction of effective fundraisers, based on their experiences.
They've done it before.
Yep, they've done it before. They have the insights.
wanted to bring up Kuth and see the committee's interest in learning more. This is currently being fully funded by the Department of Human Services. Kuth is an app, an online service. It is available to students aged 13 to 18, and it started out in the UK, and it's been going for 20 years. It is a Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 support service for students, whether it's goal setting, journaling, providing activities, discussion boards. Students can do drop-in chats, and they can also schedule counseling sessions. This is the app, and so there are things like breathe work, and again, that journaling piece is a lot of just learning in different coping skills. It helps with providing students the tools they need when they're having a difficult time. And you can't really see it, but it's building skills and habits, prioritizing youth choice, and it's also about removing barriers to care that can sometimes be really difficult when looking at outpatient mental health services or different things. If you would like to explore the app, there is a QR code for Android users and Apple users that you could go on and just kind of explore. And they have identified they would come to one of our committee meetings to present and really get into what Kuth is, to answer any questions, any concerns you may have. So really the discussion today is, would you have interest in having Kuth come out to present to learn more about this product?
I would.
It's a free app that all of the materials are free. How do they make money?
It's paid by the Department of Human Services.
Oh, okay, you had said that. And so would the rollout and the access be only smart device based, or how would, for example, how would it be applied in the classroom?
It wouldn't.
Okay.
So really it's more individual student based. It's if a student is having a hard time maybe during the day. Now, that would be something that we would need to discuss. I know cell phone use, it's not necessarily something that we allow always within the school day. However, this is also for after school, so that they would be able to go on. They could do a journal. They could maybe chat or use an app to learn a new breathing skill. So it is pretty expansive of what this can do. However, it is for 13 to 18. And once a student hits age 14, they do not need parental permission to utilize the app, because at age 14, you can receive mental health services without a parent permission.
So again, I guess that's really what I'm trying to understand about the app itself. So would it be on a smart device, say for example, like in one of the building Zenden type of environments where, a kid needs to have some downtime, and then they would maybe have a device and, hey, you can...
It would be specific to their own device. So a student would have to sign up specifically to be able to utilize the service.
So they would themselves have to have a smart device?
Correct.
That seems to me like a barrier of access. Is it an app that also goes to maybe like a Chromebook, or is it web-based?
That's
or
what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Can you get the app on like a Mac or a computer instead of just on your
Specifically a Chromebook, since
Yeah,
those are the
Chrome.
district
I'm
devices.
sorry.
Yeah.
phone? I'm a Mac girl.
Only because, I mean for the students. Yeah. Okay, Trina.
To be very honest, I do not have that answer. I know previously they did have an online component. However, they have just rolled out this brand new app. So
Right.
that is a very good question in regards to, are they keeping that online portion or are they just going to an app?
Well, it does say too in here that it's available 24/7, so they would not necessarily need to access it at school. But if you're looking at 13 to 18, you're looking at high school age kids, and I don't know of any of them that don't have a smartphone.
I mean, I guess I don't disagree with that. I think that most kids do have some sort of a device, but when you're talking about equity and availability of resources, smart devices are expensive, and I think that it's also realistic to, especially at 13, that there are quite a, based on the number of kids that we need to help, there's quite a few that really probably can't afford smartphones.
Looks like, I just went on the website, it looks like you can set up an account online.
Oh, and so if that would be a Chromebook-based thing, then every child has a device and has access. So I would be okay if there was a clear path for access.
So would they be willing to come out for an evening meeting during wellness
Yes.
and present? Because I'm also wondering about a student who might really be in serious distress and is going to the app as opposed to maybe a trusted adult in the building. And I just wonder whether or not they've encountered that, how they advise around that, so that a student's not
Right.
relying solely on this app as opposed to maybe something that could be a little bit more supportive. So I would love to hear from them. If the committee is also in agreement, it would be helpful to hear more of the insights on use.
Absolutely.
And I guess one other thing, we'll connect this to the education committee discussion. Now that we brought up the notion of possibly putting it on a district device, what would that possibly trigger within our security settings? You know, so that is something to also consider if we're thinking about what this would look like on one of our devices.
Right, right. Thank you. So I will let them know that there is interest for them to come out to present. I believe they are available for next October date, so I will definitely reach out and get that set up.
And it's a person from this Couth, or is it somebody from PD?
It's from Couth.
Oh, okay.
All right. I know we are running short on time. So the one thing that Ms. Jonaducci had identified is PV Power Packs and the partnership with high school.
Good afternoon, everybody. Is that loud enough? So Sarah and I have had several discussions regarding revitalizing our involvement from a high school standpoint, at least initially, to kind of becoming more involved or increasing our involvement back with the Power Packs organization. So we've had a lot of conversations surrounding what that could potentially look like and how do we get our students involved. Initially, our focus is going to be on incorporating, kind of going back to the old model where we had our low incidence students really helping out with packing some of the itemized materials that get sent out for our students in the Power Packs on a weekly basis. So that's our starting block. We want to at least return to that, but between our conversations, we have kind of expounded upon that and created a lot of great ideas and idea generation, and we're bringing other people on board. We have Aaron Stampler, we have Dr. Fuller, we might be incorporating getting the shop down in the high school to make us a clothing donation bin. So we're really looking at increasing that volunteerism among our students, pairing that with developing their transition skills, developing those pre-vocational skills. You know, for example, let's take the clothing donation. That's something we want to expand upon pretty quickly. I know Sarah, and please feel free to add anything as we go. Sarah's had a lot of inquiries about clothing donations and how can we donate clothing possibly to help the Power Packs organization. Also, I think there's also been inquiries about when there's a fire in the community or a family in need within the community. So that just kind of sets our brains off and rolling in the idea of how can we get our students involved? How can we use this as a learning experience? How can we align it to what their goals are in their IEP or through our college and career education and that standards alignment? So with the clothing drive, we're looking at potentially bringing a clothing drop here at the high school. Our students then can collect those items, wash those items, fold those items, all those daily living skills that we can help teach our students and give them practice in a neutral area where they can expound upon those skills. So they'd fold it, they'd inventory it, then we can set up a requisition system where they're categorizing it. If there's a family in need, an order would be put in, our students would be involved in pulling that requisition and fulfilling that need. And then we kind of really go from there. We can put a special note in there, we can wrap it in a special bin. So we have a lot of different ideas around how we get our students involved, how we get them committed in the community and feeling like they're a part of the community. We don't want it to just end with our low incidence students. It's the clothing. I think the storage area will be up in our emotional support classroom setting. Again, we're looking at students who sometimes feel disconnected from our community, and how do we get them involved and how do we get them feeling good about what they're doing while modeling potentially for our low incidence students, or looking at them as school leaders as part of this volunteerism effort and bringing in other students kind of on the coattails of that. So we have a lot of great ideas. We've talked about, well, if we have Skip Act days, how can we put a booth out at Skip Act days? How do we put our face in the community? How do we, putting our sign up, getting our collection bins that have our student signature or artwork on it to kind of get advertising in the community, what we're doing here in the school building, and getting our kids involved, not just in the school day, but potentially outside the school day as well. So a lot of good ideas coming up that we just wanted to kind of give you an update regarding that. And any feedback, any ideas, we're open to that. Or if anybody wants to add anything, like, oh, you missed something, Joan.
Well, I just want to say that I've talked to Joan and I've talked to Erin, and I am getting emails daily from social workers and counselors of needs of families. We have 202 children receiving Power Packs bags right now. That's first week of school, and we usually gain a lot of kids as the year goes on. So just in comparison, 2 years ago we had 112 at the end of the year. So the need in PV has really grown. I had 5 requests the first week of school for clothing, requests for Uber gift cards because our families can't get places, personal care items, and we're just being really stretched thin. So I would like to work as a district on all coming together to meet these needs. So Laura and I met with a couple of teachers at West the other day who run the Stuff With Us program and have the cause group, and they had some really great ideas about how they could support Power Packs in the school with some different homeroom competitions of collecting peanut butter and jelly at Valentine's Day, because what goes better together better than peanut butter and jelly. At the end of the year, I don't know how many of you have seen that Instagram reel of the cereal boxes like Domino's. So they're talking about doing that and having the students go around the track and set those up. So I'd like to expand that in all of our buildings and figure out how we do that so we're all working together as a PV community to meet the needs of our community, because the needs really are growing.
And then, Mr. Mitchell, we didn't leave you out. We also thought about what in the future can some of those curricular connections be. We see a lot of opportunities through our college and career standards. We see additional opportunities through our Act 158 where, your externships, internships. Can we potentially develop a credit-bearing course, elective, that our students who potentially are going into the giving fields can start to explore some of these things and activities that align directly with that Act 158 college and career standards as well?
And I just will add, Sarah mentioned that we went and met at West as with my Power Packs hat on and my parent alum of West hat on. We had a really nice conversation because of the work that I know is already happening there, that it would just be a natural marriage of efforts. And so one of the things we sort of brainstormed while we were sitting there is that we would really love to see some sort of initiative or buy-in from every building. And, I know, Joan, with the conversations that Sarah's passed on to our Power Packs team, we really appreciate the support and the effort, especially because of the fact that it is a marriage between a student-led initiative. And really, I think when we talk about some of the feedback, by the time the kids get a little older, sometimes there's a stigma associated with Power Packs for them to take them and go down and get them. And so I think that creating a community of helpers in each building would really destigmatize a lot of that as well. So I just think it's all very positive, and I'm really grateful to be part of both avenues.
We're excited about it. Maybe that's one of our SMART goals. I don't know.
There we go.
And really quickly, I know, Kelsey, you wanted to talk about an update.
Hi, everybody. I'm the food service director, Kelsey. I just wanted to bring up a couple of things just in line with for our free and reduced numbers in the district. They are growing. We're up to, I believe it's 37% at Schwenksville right now, which it's grown. I think that's like 3% up from last year already. We're working right now to make sure that all of the students who are going to fall off at the grace period time, every year the grace period for free and reduced, if you haven't already applied, will shut down starting October 9th. So all those students that were previously free or reduced will now have to pay for their meals unless we really get on them to either sign up or apply or get their Medicaid or their SNAP benefits in order. So me and my assistant are going to really try to reach out via phone or snail mail, email to try to get them to apply as quick as possible, because we have until the 9th until that drops off. So we're trying there to get those kids who really need that the most to be able to get free lunch. Everybody gets free breakfast again this year, but free lunch, we know that really helps families out. That's the most important thing, but I also just wanted to say, food allergy wise, we've seen a pretty big increase recently. So I'm working right now on making like specialty menus for some of the students that I know need those meals, but might have an egg allergy or a gluten allergy, but they're maybe on the free and reduced program and they feel like they can't participate as much. So I'm working with parents on that a little bit more. That's pretty much it for now. I'll stop there just in the interest of time. But we're also working on some student committees for middle school and high school meal options as well. So I'm excited to work with Dr. Fuller at the high school to see what kind of meal options students really want to see, what they don't like in the cafeterias, how we can improve just the whole program in general. So we're excited about that for this year. Thanks.
I know it's 7:01. Does anybody have any questions, any other items before we end?
Can I just add something? I was looking on the website about COOTH. The School District of Philadelphia launched it in 2023 as an online platform. So I don't know. I know that's a really large district, but it would be interesting to maybe contact them to find out about their rollout and any data that they have as it relates to students using it. Have they seen the benefits of it? So when I looked on the internet, the School District of Philadelphia launched that platform in 2023. So just a thought for you to reach out to them.
Thank you.
Okay. Erin, the only other thing I was curious about, and maybe we can speak on it just in a general update, is about the initiative that the governor put in place for menstrual products to be put into bathrooms. And I just wanted to know if you had any information or if we had an update as a district about that.
I do not have an update at this time. I know that had come out, but I will need to look into that.
So I can help out with that a little bit. There were some students who advocated very strongly to have menstrual products in the bathrooms here at the high school. They are always available to our students in the nurses' suite. However, some are less comfortable accessing them in that way. So we set up several bathrooms here at the high school, and we are now, I believe, piloting a couple of bathrooms at the middle level, making these products accessible.
Okay, so how are students made aware of the bathrooms that they're in? That could be rhetorical. You don't have to answer. I don't want to put you on the spot about it.
But I'm not sure. It's a good question because we want students to know that these are available. I'm not sure how we communicated that at the high school last year, but we can find out and report back on that a little bit more comprehensively next month.
Okay, so I mean, I guess just for continuity purposes, if it's something that's being allowed by the state, I'm assuming it's state paid for, correct? I guess, I don't know. How do we get the material? I have a lot of questions about it, right?
Okay, so currently, our nurses have these products. We've budgeted for them. They're in the general fund. We buy them so that our nurses have supplies in their nurses suite available for students who need them.
Okay, so I guess, go ahead, I'm so sorry.
According to what the state put out, PV should be getting $8,522.50 for the menstrual products that Governor Shapiro approved. And then there is policy on how best practice for putting those that he put out. I can share it with you. Because we did have the conversation with the middle school too, and those teachers that we met with were advocating for having it in the bathrooms because of students feeling embarrassed to go to the nurse's office. So.
Yeah, and I'm guessing Mr. Weaver and Mrs. Hurd will probably take those monies and offset what we spend currently in the general fund, so it's nice to know what the number is. And the plan was to move to the middle schools, but I need to get the details of where we are in that process.
Okay.
And we can report back, and then I'd like to take a look at the best practices that Governor Shapiro and his office published, and we'll look at how we're incorporating those or not, and what we might need to do. We could report on that next month.
That would be helpful. Yeah, I just would think that way it is consistently rolled out. And then, I don't know, I even was thinking when we had the conversation about where they would be and how to, how many do you put in and who restocks them and all of that stuff. How do you bring them into the buildings? Maybe the single-use bathrooms, since there's
Privacy.
Yeah, privacy and just there's more ability to really, you don't need them to be wasted, obviously, or et cetera. So I just was curious how the whole thing was going to play out. Thank you.
Report out.
All right, thank you.
It's not just for at school, like kids can take extra than money.
That's amazing. I didn't. Did you just find that? You found it earlier?
That's what it says on the thing. Yeah. They are. We get requests for them all the time.
And that's like how, and then what, like which ones do you pick?
So we've got dispensers, and the dispensers
This microphone works, this one does not.
Good night. Feel better.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Good night. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, honey.
I think I'm gonna book out on this one.
That's
Mr. Ganesh,
dedication. Thank you for
stopping by and
coming.
making sure everything's working well. Very much appreciated.
Mr. McGill, will you join us at the table? It's sort of a little casual, because that's at the whole, unless you don't want to join us at the table. You don't have to.
And Dr. Clune, you can as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's really it's more,
Okay, where did Mr. Mitchell go?
well, it's his show. We'll just let everybody get settled. You want to stay over there? Come sit next to me.
This is fine. This is okay. I mean, as long as we use the mics.
Oh, that's true. And then the folks would need a mic anyway in the out. Anywhere you'd like. It is of the whole, so everyone's invited, but not everybody will be here. Don left. And so you're welcome to be here or wherever.
Yep. Yep, yep. You do not. You can introduce and begin.
Good evening, everyone. So welcome to the Education Committee of the Whole meeting. I'm Arthur Mitchell, of course, the Assistant to the Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. Ms. White, I'm my own worst enemy here. You said I've been the good luck charm for getting out early, so we'll see what happens.
We're starting 10 minutes late, so you're already granted grace.
Okay, so we have a pretty aggressive agenda. A lot of this is information that I would like to present. We have a couple of items which are for discussion for approval, but a lot of this, and some is just information. So as we get started, I'm going to move right into, so here's our agenda, moving from federal program allocations line-wise, which Mr. Ganesh will be presenting, and then from there, our induction plan, comprehensive planning, talking about visual and performing arts programs, our 5th grade acceleration and 8th grade algebra, and then the providing the PSAT and administration at the high school. The federal programs is really just information that this is just an ongoing discussion we want to be able to have around the allocation, making everyone aware just where the reductions are occurring. Over the past 2 years, this reduction has been fairly significant. This is just the 1-year reduction that we see in programming for our federal title programs. Impacts for the reductions, for the Title I reduction that we're seeing there would actually be we're looking at the services that are being provided. The big impact is in staffing for some aides which are supported by Title I, that we'll have to actually reduce hours and possibly a position at one of the schools due to the reduction of the Title I funding. We checked with the state because our Title I numbers are up slightly, but we still have a reduction in our Title I funding. And they said it's not an aberration. There's nothing that we've done. There's nothing we can do. That is directly coming from the federal government down to us, and that's how the allocation is falling out. So I just wanted to share this as a moment of awareness of that reduction, that continuous reduction in the Title I or in our federal program allocations. Dr. Russell, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, well, I will add, thank you. We have felt the reduction, and we have an increase in the number of schools that qualify. Evergreen qualified for the first time, I believe, last year, maybe the year before, but it's been a recent addition. So now, instead of dividing these funds among 3 schools, we are dividing them among 4 schools. So we have fewer funds, if you will, and 4 schools instead of 3 to support. So we do the best that we can. There's a lot of conversation with principals about how to best utilize these funds and be as resourceful as possible. But it is becoming a little bit more difficult to carry on what we've had in place, which really depended upon staff. We added staff to support interventions or remediation or tutoring of our students.
So, as I said, this was just for information, so any commentary, any questions that go along with this? Yes.
I think the comment or question that I have is something that you just were talking about here, is that how are we meeting the challenge that's posed by this reduction? What's the plan to provide the services we need to provide with less resource?
The resources, if you go back one slide, Mr. Mitchell, the resources are prorated based upon the percentage of free and reduced students in a particular building. And instead of a building having 6 Title I assistants, they might only have 4 if the funds only support that. We have avoided, in most cases, full-time Title I assistants so that we avoid benefits, and they are instead part-time individuals. So we can also shift the number of hours around to support a school schedule and when students could have access to individuals identified as Title I assistants. We also try to really target them to where we believe we're being the most resourceful. Is it in early literacy development with K-1-2 students? Is it in math facts and math fluency and math reinforcement in the upper grades? So principals are really careful about that with their teams. But we are trying to do what we can with a little bit less funds. So a lot of the same, but to a lesser degree. Fewer people are employed. We use a lot of the Title I funds to pay salary for staff, assistants. We have fewer of them. That's probably the biggest change. And this is my fault, Mr. Mitchell, usually the board does approve what we are proposing to do with our title allocations, so that Title II is, Title I must touch students, Title II must touch staff, professional learning. So we use a lot of Title II, really, to support the professional learning experiences of the individuals in our district. And then Title IV touches safety, touches volunteerism, that supports the Martin Luther King Day of Service. It also supported our participation in the Delaware Valley Consortium for Excellence and Equity. And usually we do share this with the board and then request their action, their approval, so they have some sense of what we're doing with these grant funds. So that was my mistake that we didn't have that in the slide. We'll correct that. We'll bring that to them in October.
Okay, sounds good.
One other question while we're on this part. The top of the slide says that it's a 2-year comparison. So is the first column of numbers from 2 years ago, or did we see a reduction?
So that first column, I'm sorry, is the 24-25 allocation.
Okay.
The second column is 23-24, so that's where you're seeing that reduction in red in that third column.
So it is over 1 year, not 2.
Sorry, yes.
Okay.
I didn't put in the 2-year comparison. I was saying over 2 years because I was looking at those 2-year numbers. There's been something very significant.
Understood. I didn't know which,
But
without the dates
I did a
there.
year-to-year comparison. there.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
And there is no public commentary, or is there any public commentary? Making sure. And so now we'll move on to line-wise. I'll drive here. Is that fine for you?
Yeah, that'll be perfect. Good evening, everyone. So over the past few months, since April, we've been piloting a suite of products from LineWise, ClassWise, Monitor, and Filtering being the 3 different products that we have. So ClassWise is a classroom management software that kind of helps our students to stay focused and engaged. I have a short video that we'll look at shortly. Monitor is a tool that kind of monitor all our students' activity for violence, self-harm, bullying. It monitors like about 7 categories. And if any of those content is detected in the student activity, it kind of alerts us. There's also a trained professional from LineWise kind of monitoring this as well, and they have the ability to call us if there's something urgent that we need to take a look at. That's a monitor tool. The filtering is just a regular Chromebook filtering. It prevents our students from accessing inappropriate content. It's a cloud-based filtering, meaning that even when the Chromebooks go home, these devices continue to get filtered. So those are 3 different products that we've been piloting from LineWise, with ClassWise being the major one.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Yeah, it's fine. If you can full screen that video, Dr. Russell. So again, ClassWise is the major product here. So out of the 3 products, ClassWise is a big tool there. This is the tool that our teachers are currently using, our pilot teachers are currently using. So on the dashboard that you see, the student Chromebook screens automatically push to their dashboard based on the rosters. So if a student is absent, that Chromebook screen does not come over to the dashboard. Only when a student is present in their classroom, sitting in front of them, their screens are pushed to the dashboard, and the students and the teachers are able to kind of in a way moderate the content that goes onto that Chromebook. If you can go to the next screen.
I think you have to minimize that so I can get back to the.
It really wants you to see it again.
All right, so as you can see here, there's plenty of features for the ClassWise. Some of the notable features are the ability for a teacher to push content to a student Chromebook, especially for younger learners. Instead of a teacher instructing, go to class link, click on that link, go here, whatnot, they're able to push that content, the resource, right to the Chromebook screen. That kind of saves valuable instructional time. That's a great feature there. They're able to discreetly help students by using the chat feature. And there's also the focus option where they're able to log the students to a particular screen or content. And once they are completed the work, they're able to reward them by kind of letting that focus off and able to kind of let them go off to the different sections. So there are a couple of nice features that our teachers are able to enjoy with this particular tool. So moving on, again, these are 2 other smaller tools that comes with this suite. So again, the filter is again a regular Chromebook filter. We currently have a product called Securely. This would replace Securely. This goes on to every Chromebook. It moderates the content, that it moderates what goes onto that Chromebook. This way, there's no inappropriate content available on the student Chromebooks. We're able to push out this filter to any kind of devices, be it a Windows, Mac, or whatnot, and able to get some real-time notifications. So one of the areas where we really, I don't want to use the word struggle, but there's a big, students are a little savvy here, is using VPNs to kind of bypass our filters, right? So this kind of has a much more stricter approach to VPNs. So this is able to block those VPN capabilities in a much better fashion. So those are the things that comes with the filter. Again, like the monitor is another feature where it kind of monitors the student content, where there's the bottom right is 7 categories that it monitors: the violence, mental health, bullying, etc. So whenever such content is detected, it automatically sends us an alert, and also that alert goes to a trained professional from ClassWise who's watching these, and if there's a need that person need to take an action, they can pick up a phone and get to us like right away if we need to kind of look into this right away. So I think that's a big piece, having a human moderation in this product. I think that's huge. That's something that we have not had in the past 5-6 years since we went one-to-one. So those are the nice features that comes along with the ClassWise with the filter and monitor features. So we go to the next screen. So as I said, like, we've been piloting this product since April. We have about 40+ teachers participating in this pilot. Again, this is a very popular tool that a lot of our neighboring districts are using. So we did look at other products like GoGuardian, Securely, Hapara, etc., and we felt that this product best suit the district needs. Again, we recently met with our pilot group, and we had a lot of very positive feedback from the group. So the committee is in favor. We would like to move forward with this product with the implementation, and that's a timeline that we have. The committee is in favor. We'll bring it to the board approval in October. Sticking with the pilot.
Just jumped right to the spring. You almost gave Jim a heart attack just there.
That's my thing, right? To give Jim a heart attack.
Yeah, there you go. He's just not that deep into the budget yet. That's all.
That's right. So bring it to the board in October. This would be a quick implementation. We expect to, if approved by the board, we could expect to implement this in October itself, and possibly have the training sessions in November during the in-service days.
I've got some questions. If you want to go, Barb, first. Or?
I was just going to add a little bit more context to this. If I'm a chemistry teacher and I have a class of 25 students, what teachers have realized over the years that we've had one-to-one in place is that students can be very savvy, and sometimes they drift and aren't on task They aren't viewing what they should be viewing or working on what they should be working on, but they have a lot of tabs open. And this resource allows them to see from their computer where students are on the internet, what they're accessing, what they're working on. And it also affords them the opportunity to click them out of a site, and there are questions around that we're exploring, or to send them a message, a very personal message. Hey, Barb, you need to be on X site as opposed to the one you're on. Or the teacher can send a message to the entire class. We are now going to shift to a Y site, whatever that site would be. And initially, when teachers were expressing some real concern with the challenges of their students using devices, it sort of parallels the cell phone challenges that we've been experiencing and some of the modifications that we've made to support our students with ethical use, accountable use, responsibility. We are trying to balance this with teaching our students how to use the internet appropriately when a teacher is leading them or when they're working on something in a class. However, at the same time, some of our students are not able to meet the expectations with those lessons alone. This resource is one, and we met with teachers that are piloting. Mr. McGill is one of those. This resource is one that our teachers would really appreciate us being able to implement to support their efforts and to be able to, in conjunction with being able to control or manage, also teach our students about what is expected and how they should be accountable moving forward. Now, what Mr. Ganesh didn't mention, and we need to mention, is that it would be about a $60,000 investment, and we have not budgeted for it. It would need to come out of fund balance. So that's more 60,000 or somewhere around there.
Around 45.
Okay, 45, thank you. But it's a significant.
Good. See, they're setting expectations.
Yeah, that's right. It's always good to come down.
Yeah. Wow, what a deal. 45.
Now, what Mr. Ganesh also mentioned is we currently have a system in place that fulfills one of the three functions of LineWise, the monitoring. It's called Securely. And when students send emails or when they type searches, and maybe they are searching suicide, or maybe they're searching weapons, that sends a message to our tech team, and then they redirect that message to a counselor or to Chief Miller, et cetera. If we upgrade to LineWise and to this particular class-wise management system, that will be upgraded, and as Mr. Ganesh mentioned, there will be a live person on the other side of the computer that will help us field these red flags, if you will, questionable searches or search terms, emails that are sent, so that we can address them most effectively.
So thank you for the background, because I don't know that everybody had that from the previous conversation. Ready for my questions? So teachers have, the ones that are piloting it, so it's at every level, even elementary. Okay, so obviously this is only applicable if there's Chromebook work that's happening in the classroom. And so I don't know, that varies probably day to day, week to week, and then also subject to subject, I would imagine. So some of the questions that I have about this screen, that's the little image you have, that's obviously on a laptop. Do teachers have their laptop hooked into a monitor, or how would they be, because that's only so many, it's only so big, right? So I'm assuming at a glance, really you're wanting to look at a glance and see what's kind of happening, and if you have to toggle through do you know what I'm saying?
Right. So we heard various feedback from how the teachers operate. Mr. Meckle, feel free to jump in. So one of the things that we heard from the high school teachers, our laptops can be folded as a tablet. So when they walk around, they do carry it to kind of see what students are doing.
And they can kind of scroll.
Right. So
and
that's
see.
That's one of the ways that they use it. For teachers just using it as a laptop, again, some of them mentioned that they can just look at the screen just for a couple of seconds, and then they know if somebody's on Netflix, they right away know that,
Sure,
So
because they see it, right? They would see it,
a
right?
different screen, so they're able to quickly identify who's not on the right screen. Okay. Just the laptop screen, from what we heard, is more than enough, is what I understand. Mr. Meckle, do you agree?
Okay. Yeah, I guess I just, to me, it sort of, it's a fluid. I'm trying to put the use of it in a classroom situation. So teachers are having fluid conversation, engaging, this and that. They're facilitating conversations between the kids and all of these different things, and then also looking at it. The idea that you can do they call it that anymore? I am a kid and actually say like, hey, please pay attention, or hey, here's a little extra help, or that's awesome as a feature, but I just can't envision how tangible that is in a classroom management execution. Like you can't, if it was a college
That was one of the questions that
seminar.
I asked that to the focus groups, how distracting it is, or how much does it take away from the time they're spending actually providing instruction. And to a person, they said none. That this was something that they could use because they could see it at a glance. So elementary teachers were talking about having centers, and they're working with one group of students, and because the other students are sitting right there doing something else, they could look very quickly and see if anyone was off task.
Okay.
So that
So that's an
being able to
elementary
walk
application,
around with
right.
with their device and be at one spot in the room and see what's going on in another spot in the room was really helpful to them, because they didn't have to go back to a desktop or anything like that. That they could actually just walk around with a device and do
That's
the monitoring.
that's a good example with the elementary centers. I'm trying to picture it in all different scenarios.
So,
Well, and remember, teachers already have eyes in the back of their head, so this is
Right.
just
Well, and
aiding
you're
them.
not, it's not like a sit and get type of thing, right? Like
Right.
the teachers are wandering around the classroom anyway,
Correct.
so that.
So I wanted to emphasize that because teachers emphasize that it does not anchor them to their desks. And they're not anchored to their desks to watch this software and see where their students are. It's not at all like that. And they really, so I had firsthand conversations, as did Mr. Mitchell. I really wanted to hear from teachers so that I could come here tonight with an informed recommendation, if you will. And it doesn't anchor teachers, but it does provide them with the ability to monitor and help manage where their students are in the ways that have been described already. And the other thing that teachers emphasized that I was very appreciative of was, this is not about a gotcha. That is not at all what it's about. But it is about helping our students to realize, I am expecting you to be here doing this. Please, I am redirecting you, go where you're supposed to be. And they were really, at both levels, elementary and secondary, really clear about that. This is about a respectful way to make sure students are doing what they're supposed to be doing,
Yeah.
that they believe will pay off at the next level, whatever that is.
That sort of segues into my next question, is that you mentioned about it being a gotcha. I guess my concern, not
Right.
being a gotcha, correct. So my concern would be about actually how it's implemented in the classroom, because teacher to teacher, there's some different management styles, I think. So within either the team of teachers or, there's a lot of variation of how things are applied. So I think that sometimes it might be easy for, depending on your dynamic and your classroom vibe, to create a gotcha. Collective.
I kind of have a related question that kind of jumps right on that. It does have to do with the gotcha portion of it. For the teacher that has this up and running, is it only live information, what the students are looking at that moment? So there's no go back 5 minutes?
You can get history, but it is live, it's real time. But if you need to run the history of where a student's been because you have some questions, you can do that.
And how long does that save?
I don't know that.
I mean, we got to go back to line ways to ask them how long that is saved, but to further expand on that, so they can go back to the history of what happened on the fourth period when K. Ganesh was sitting in front of them.
Yeah.
Not when I'm at fourth period, when I'm in a different place, they can't track me. Like only when I'm in front of them, they can go back and look at, did I pay attention or not?
So it's a history of that, let's say a
History
session?
of your rosters, history of your class.
Okay.
So you can go back at the end of the day and see how did my
Right.
sixth
Period 1, this is what everybody was doing
everybody
while
was
I was
doing.
talking.
Right. Period 2, this is what I was doing. Once I leave that classroom, once the student leaves that classroom, that teacher no longer has the ability to track that student.
And then they mirror in the new place that they go.
That's exactly. It's based on your roster. So wherever you go is where that particular teacher has access. the dashboard that populates based on your rosters.
Yeah, and I guess that's part of my other question, not having seen this actually operate. Does the student need to do anything different? Do they just log into the Wi-Fi as they usually would, or are they logging on to like the teacher's terminal?
Student behave, just they log into the Chromebook.
Part of the
It's
network.
part of the network, so it
Yeah.
automatically, the student don't have to do anything different.
Okay.
It's just a normal login.
So I wanted to comment on the gotcha because, again, I was very impressed with how teachers handled this. I mean, I think there was one example of a teacher who maybe didn't communicate up front. This would be my recommendation, though. Another teacher was very articulate and eloquent in being very honest and upfront with her students, indicating to them, this is not, I'm not monitoring you and what you're doing, but I am managing this classroom and I am expecting you to be on task and doing what I assigned for you. Very open and honest, transparent about the tool and the resource and why it was something that she was using. That would be the expectation, I think, if we adopt this, that we would want to be open and honest with our students and help them to know this is to support you being successful as a student.
Right, so I guess from the pilot standpoint, that makes sense that that would be the feedback because I feel like those are the teachers that are really invested in, you know, fidelity and not that everybody's not, but just that that's the pilot group. Like the whole objective is to see how this can be successful, right? That's what a pilot's about. So what type of PD then would be developed to allow for exactly the same experience to be duplicated? And then how do we measure that that's actually happening in the classroom?
Well, I mean, I know that any time we're going to roll this out, we have to, all the questions that are being asked right now around what teacher behavior should look like in this, those are the things we want to put in front of them. We want to put the scenarios there, we want to put the expectations there, and also the opportunities for growth. This is not a one-time we train you and then we expect you to go forward. It is we implement this and then we continue to work with you and coach you in how you grow with this in order to make sure that, you know, some of the, you know, tech nervousness around using this, some of the knee-jerk reactions to use it in ways that may not be, you know, match our better angels in the classroom from a teacher standpoint, that we actually work through those things, that we're working with the administrators as well, because the administrators in the building have a role in ensuring that this is being implemented with the type of not just fidelity, but with the spirit and
Attention, right.
you know,
Yeah.
the attention to detail that is going to use this as an educational tool. I mean, ultimately, this is an educational tool in the classroom in order to maintain focus and engagement.
Right.
And we want to ensure that that's what's occurring, and that it is not the gotcha, it is not punitive, it is not being misused in ways where the students then feel like there's some level of Orwellian oppression that's happening within their technology experience.
And I think that that's really exactly where I'm going to with that, because to me, when you talk about behaviors, regardless of the level that kids are at, I feel as though unless you're really leading with partnership in mind, then there's no buy-in. So it becomes a us versus them struggle, and I feel that way very strongly about, you know, the cell phone usage at the high school, for example, this year, that rules changing, that unless there's consistency in the partnership narrative of this is the reason we have to, or this is the reason that we're using this as a tool to, then there becomes this resentment, and it has the opposite effect of it being a productive tool. It really undermines the autonomy of our students, and I feel like it really creates a perception that they're not trusted or they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and I feel that way about obviously a lot of different subjects, but this particular is very, I understand the positives of why it's good in terms of allowing for engagement and historical tracking, and again, the IM thing is cool, but it feels very Big Brother to me. So then I feel as though, you know, my other things that I wrote down were how, if you have a sub in the class, does this then not get used? If that's consistently used in a science class, now a sub is in that class, now that's a free-for-all because now there's no lead, the teacher's not there and there's a sub, so I have that written down. And then also how this would apply to children with IEPs, because I think there are some instances, depending on how the IEP is written or what it's for, that or even like a 504 situation, that this would feel triggering to a lot of those students that really have an issue with drive for autonomy and, you know, that type of behavior mindset, that collective nature of everybody's in one bucket.
So this, like other things, should essentially fade into the background and just really be background noise of what happens in classroom instruction. I mean, that is really what the goal is, that this is not intrusive, it is just a way of interacting in the classroom, that the teacher would be able to redirect no differently than the teacher would come stand next to a student to redirect. They just get to do it from a distance. And it is in order to make sure that as we're on task, as we're doing things we're supposed to, that we have the type of rapport and respect that is necessary. And that when we do have to use this in ways that we have to redirect students, that we have some evidence, we can have a conversation, and we can turn it into, once again, we're redirecting because we want the best for you. And right now, because you are off task, you may not be able to accomplish what you're supposed to in that space. And we don't want that to occur. And we don't want you to be in a situation where, you know, this continued behavior is going to have a negative impact on you. So no different than any other classroom management tool, we just happen to have a technology tool that in this case we are able to utilize because technology is moving faster and you know, than we can sometimes manage, and we want to bring some of that management back so that the teachers really do have the ability to have a level of comfort with the type of autonomy we'd like to have for the entire group.
Yeah, that was a great answer. It really was, because I feel like it was, I mean, that's really what I would think I would be reading if I was reading about why this is good, right? I guess my challenge to that would be, if this is really no different, because it shouldn't be, why do we need to implement a technology tool for classroom management that should be occurring anyway? I've realized if our class sizes were like, you know, 50 kids, like seminar size, like maybe that would be a good tool. But if we have class sizes of 24, 25 kids, sometimes there's a co-teacher, sometimes there's a para, like why do we need to implement a technology to create a classroom management atmosphere that's been happening for the last decades and decades, 50, 60 years? Go ahead, Mr. McGill, he has his finger up.
Go right ahead, Bill. Yes.
All right, so I'm Bill McGill, a third grade teacher at Evergreen. And we surveyed the teachers maybe about 2 years ago as to whether or not they would be interested in looking into this, and there was very high interest on a lot of teachers in taking a look at this tool to help them in the classroom. I don't see this any different than myself teaching a math lesson and the student's supposed to be working in their workbook, and then another student is sitting there reading Captain Underpants instead of working in their workbook. Right? That student's off task. So instead of hardback now, right? Now we're in the digital format of a computer. So this gives me the ability to actually see, are the students on task? And believe it or not, by third grade, students are very adept at making it look like they're on task and can flip between windows and close things out real quick whenever you start walking around or come near them. When you're on the other side of the classroom, they're somewhere else. So this allows me to have a conversation with that student to let them know that I know that you're not on task. So the accountability just went up for the student. And then if that continues, this product gives me the ability to help that student in additional ways stay on task. Just like if they were reading Captain Underpants when they were supposed to be working in a math workbook.
So I guess then what I would say to that scenario would be, does the Captain Underpants kid have their stuff done that they were supposed to be working on that you thought they did? Or like, in other words, sometimes kids lose attention and lose focus because they've already completed what you are now reiterating for the other folks in the room. And so sometimes maybe that would trigger, like, to me, what I'm hearing is that could be an opportunity to actually have an intervention of an enrichment. Like, maybe they need something else to do, as opposed to they're just not listening. Does that make sense?
It does, and my past experience tells me that they did not accomplish what they were supposed to be doing before they wandered.
Okay.
So I just also wanted to add, if I could, that when this first came up, there were several of us as administrators that were resistors, thinking about it in the way that you are, as an idealist to some extent. And the more I talked to teachers, and they shared their efforts to really try and get students to meet the expectations of where they're supposed to be on their Chromebooks, the more that I was educated around the challenges that they're facing with these resources and the efforts that we need to go to really develop our students as digital citizens that use these resources ethically and responsibly. And again, in support of their success as learners. So I pushed back for a while, and then I became somebody who now supports our teachers, having had some conversations with them, having realized some of the challenges that they're facing day in and day out. And we've all heard this expression, the kids know more than we do. In many cases, our kids are very savvy. I love that about our kids. However, if I'm a teacher in front of a group, it can be really challenging too at the same time. So this is not a gotcha tool. It's not, in fact, they were careful not to use monitoring. They used management tool. They want to really stay focused on, this is to help me manage what's happening in the class so that you realize the learning outcomes.
So I guess that I would feel, I just feel like that's why I asked the question as to what would the professional development look like for the rollout? And so how long has the pilot been in place? Just last year? Or?
Yeah, we started late last year, April, May.
Okay, I was trying to remember the timing.
Right.
So I guess, I know that it's a bullet point up there that it happened and it's across all grades and all that, but like, how is feedback gathered other than just, anecdotally? I mean, do we have actual data from 40 plus teachers? Have the kids that have had the experience in the classroom with those teachers weighed in on what their perceptions of it was, what worked, what didn't work, what they liked, what they didn't like? To Dr. Russell's point, we do have very savvy students, and they really do have opinions about what they feel like when they're experiencing different types of interaction in the classroom. And I feel as though, if I was in the classroom, I want to know what my kid's perception is, right? Because you can stand up there and pontificate all day, but if you're not breaking through if you think you're using this in a way that's a management tool, but the kids feel oppressed by it, that to me is, again, a fail.
If I may offer one more example of a classroom management tool. So the Chromebooks that the students have, the more windows that they have open, the slower their computers work. And I'll get students with, I'm getting the spinning wheel on their computer, or I'm not connecting, or the internet's not working. Well, the internet is working. And then if I go and check real quick, like I can see from my desktop, you have 12 windows open. If you close that and go down to maybe 3, your computer's going to work more efficiently. And we're not going to have these spinning windows, or the spinning wheel. So again, it's just an opportunity to talk to the student and educate them on these things. And I know the one student I had that I had that conversation with, they're real careful now about how many windows they have open because they know that impacts how their computer works. So that's one example.
I think, though, to your point, I I would be curious to hear what students would say, the students in the classes that had teachers participating in the pilot. And I think we could probably gather some of those data and that anecdotal information. I mean, we could go to Mrs. Lykowski's class out at Schwanksville and talk to the fifth graders, or into the middle school and some of the teachers, Mrs. Arcangeli's class, and learn from students. So how did this support you as a learner? What did it feel like? Yeah. What, or how did it not? Now, while that information is really helpful and informative, and I would hope would end up being supportive, I think there's also what's really in the best interest of our students with these resources. And that's also a question that's looming out there in the minds of our teachers, because it's just too hard to keep up with them sometimes.
Well, and to that point, I mean, the student feedback to me wouldn't be to drive a recommendation, because again, they're students, right? And so you all are the professionals. But I think in my mind, the student feedback could help inform what development or coaching may be needed to create an environment that actually achieves the goal. Right. That to me is really what my reservation, it's not that I wouldn't want a tool in the hands for all of the good reasons. It would be what the negative outcome could potentially be. And I think that, going back to that IEP 504 accommodation piece, some of those children have very specific ways that their brains work. So 12 tabs may be like, oh, it's slowing your computer down, it may not work. But those 12 tabs may be, there are children in our buildings that have a reason that those tabs are open, and they need them to be open in their mind because X, Y, Z. Like, that's just the way they're wired, right? So to me, that's where I guess my point of view is coming from, is that there could be a kid completely doing what they need to be doing all the time, and then this could somehow create undue turmoil.
If I may,
Yeah.
if I knew that that a student needed that, I would not be having that conversation with them about closing out your 12 tabs.
Correct, right, but that's
Right.
what I mean, like that you need to then, like, kind of, as you do
And-
all day long,
and
every
there's
day,
no-
read the room, right?
There's no setting in there that says students may only have 1 or 2 tabs open, right?
Sure.
So there's nothing in there that's going to hinder.
Right. Those are the
that ability.
scenarios, though.
Yeah.
So to me, I would want you, as my kid's teacher, to be like, oh, I know that they're okay, but it's the idea that it's an all or nothing, yeah, okay, right. In my mind, I'm saying right now, like in talking about it.
I think, Ms. White, your point about how do we learn about the use of this management resource or tool to avoid the gotcha feeling on the part of our students, and so that they internalize and understand the real purpose of the tool. So I think that's what you're suggesting administration figures out. If we are to go down this path and adopt the resource, how do we avoid that? And that is absolutely what everybody else desires to have as an outcome.
I'm sorry. So I'm listening to everything. So the qualitative data is important as well as the quantitative data, because I think my question is, well, what's the intention? What's the purpose of us having this? Is it just for a management tool? It's like, I guess that's my question. What is the sole purpose of using this tool? Because that'll kind of drive how the teachers are going to learn how to use the tool. No, it's not a got you at all. But I'm also curious, with the Securely system, how often did you all get notifications about students being on websites that they weren't supposed to be on? And how is that data different than what you're getting now with the pilot teachers with the line-wise? Are you still able to get those notifications when students are on websites that they're not supposed to be on with the line-wise? Or is it really just based on the teachers seeing that the kids aren't where they're supposed to be?
So there are three pieces of software that we looked at, right? The monitor is what kind of alerts us on what data the student is on a certain website that they should not be. We have that capability now, but it's kind of a watered down version. Everything comes to one email address, and then we got to then figure out which school it is. Then we got to then transfer that or forward that information to that appropriate building, counselors, whatnot. So this tool would automatically do that. Would automatically know, this child, Joe Smith, is in 7th grader. Here are his teachers. Here is his counselor. Here is his principal. Automatically forward that instantly. Plus somebody trained person from line-wise is also looking at that to see whether this alert is something that needs to be escalated or not. So those are the things we're missing with the current software.
Okay.
We do have some capabilities now, but not to the extent that this would allow us to do. So that is our kind of a securely equivalent. And on a daily basis, I would say we get, there's plenty of things that we get alerts on. Hey, this information was blocked. This was blocked. We get tons of that. Okay, we're not worried about that. The one that we pay attention to is somebody emails saying, hey, or somebody searches certain things that is not appropriate. Those are the things that we will be more concerned about and immediately bring in the counselor saying, hey, this student is searching for this content, maybe there's something that you might want to have a conversation with. So those are the things that we would take immediate action on.
So I guess my question is, say in a year, how often do you have those types of alerts where students, with the securely system, how often for a school year, during a school year, do you have students at those websites that make you want to, doing things that make you want to alert, like the guidance counselor or administrators?
We get several a day. Again, that could be, a lot of them are false positives because the students are probably researching about a certain drug, they're researching about pregnancy, or they're researching about certain things. So we get several a day, and then we kind of have to see, okay, are the students in whatever class? We got to make a decision on whether this is a false positive or not. And again, there are certain emails that would come out and kind of say there is some commotion at home. So those are the emails that we would automatically forward to the counselor. So we get several a day. We triage them and take action based on that. So the volume is several emails, several alerts, several emails every day. Again, a vast majority of them are false positives, but there are some real issues in those emails as well. In those emails, search terms, these websites that I go to, etc.
And I think that could be indicative of something different. We could be measuring something different with those data versus how less frequently are we having to redirect students on the internet.
Right.
But we could certainly quantify, he has a record of all the emails that come through.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
And would we or have you seen a decrease? I guess you can't because the whole district isn't using it. It's just certain teachers are using it. But I'm curious if we do use this system, will you see a decrease in students on websites that they shouldn't be on while they're in class with teachers? I'm just curious as to, is there a way to kind of compare? But I don't think we can because
We could pull the teachers that don't have the system and see how many, if they're incurring problems, or is that, I don't know. I'm asking if that is that what you're thinking? Like, how would you find out if it improved it is what you're asking.
Right.
So then I guess the teachers that don't have it and they're not using it, what kind of problems are they seeing? But then maybe they wouldn't know, because then how would they know if they don't know?
Right.
Okay, right.
And, I wonder, Mr. McGill, if you can speak from your experience, did the frequency of the need for you to redirect decrease over time? Or did it stay pretty much the same? Was there any kind of difference?
So I started using it last year as soon as we got the pilot, which I think was in April. And I want to say within 2 weeks, my heavy hitters that would wander were no longer wandering. And I also learned that many of my third graders no longer watch TV. They watch YouTube. And that's where most of them were going. So that's just an interesting fact about the young generation coming up. But I would say within about 2 weeks, the students who were wandering were no longer doing so because they knew that I would know.
Right, like I was thinking they have it and they don't have it, but a half-year application is a great
That's
point.
good data right,
Right.
there that says it's a good tool. You know what I mean?
Miguel, how long did it take you to understand and get it up and running for yourself as a teacher? Was it easy?
A day.
Nice.
And I'm not tech savvy.
That is the feedback we've gotten.
Especially if he doesn't realize that little kids are watching YouTube.
I'm glad Connor's not in your class anymore.
That's the feedback we've gotten from most of the pilot teachers. We have not trained them. We just pointed them to the class-wise resource. There's a website that kind of has some on-demand training, so they're able to use that and get it up and running. So,
Just a nuts and bolts question here. The $45,000, I'm assuming that come out of the technology budget?
it's not budgeted for. It's not.
It's not budgeted.
So
Would that be
technically-
where you would anticipate it?
So Dr. Russell and I had a conversation with Mr. Weaver. So we are still trying to figure if we were to move forward in this direction, this will have to come from unassigned fund balance this year. And next year, this will be part of the technology software budget, yes.
Okay.
So this year, it's not budgeted for.
Because this would be an annual license, I'm assuming, for the entire district.
Right, that is correct.
And does the timeline of an October approval, and is that what you would prefer to get this up and running? Or do we have more questions?
Yeah, I'm curious what the rush is, other than, like, why, for example, why wouldn't we just wait and implement it next year after it's worked into the budget?
So one of the things is our pilot. Typically the pilot is given only for 3 months.
Oh,
So we piloted in April, May, June. So that school year was over, and then we went back to them again, and then said our teachers would still like to. We want to expand the pilot to more than couple of dozen teachers were using it this. So we expanded the pilot this school year. So we asked for another extension. We are on the second extension. So if you're not going in this direction, at least we gotta let them know of our intention, one way or another. So technically, we have been using their product for the last 6 months. That's a full-fledged product. The last 6 months, we've been using that for free, exactly. So, and that's a timeline that that we have initially developed. We'll go through the pilot, we'll see how it goes, and then we'll implement it in the new school year. But that seemed a little too aggressive, so we kind of said, well, let's pilot it even further into fall, and then we'll try to implement it in the winter. So that is this is a second timeline that we have.
I mean, I don't know that it has to be October. We have the access until November, Mr. Ganesh. And if we take some time to maybe get some student feedback, I mean, October, I can understand why October, it's 2 weeks away now at this point, almost 3 weeks away. Maybe because I think with the questions that we've had tonight, it will prompt more information in the memo to the board, the board at large again, just to continue to build on the other information that they've had, our previous information. Maybe November would feel a little bit more comfortable if the group.
I know for my part, I really would like to hear some more of the feedback from the people that have helped.
are you on?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, sorry. I
I'm
couldn't
just
hear.
that's just the way I am.
Okay.
That's my voice. I'd like to hear more feedback directly from the people that were involved in the pilot. I'd very much like to hear student feedback if that's appropriate. I don't know. There's been a lot of conversation tonight, and I appreciate what the benefits for this might be. I'm still not real clear on how necessary or how it would work in PV. The video that we showed tonight, that was very interesting.
but in that video, I'm seeing a lot of students sitting at their individual desks, at their individual workstations. Almost reminded me of being in the cubicles back when I was working. And you know, that doesn't jibe with what I saw when we've done the walkthroughs in the elementary school and in the middle school. That just doesn't look like how they operate here. When I'm looking at this before, it looked like something that would be very useful if we were still doing virtual school. But when we're all in the classroom, I think I need a little bit more info and feedback as to how this is working, how the Chromebooks are used in the classroom as a classroom tool, and then how this would be used to help facilitate that. And I think I need a lot more feedback before I'm ready to give this a go ahead for myself.
I agree with you, Dr. Weston, completely. I guess, you know, I understand not wanting to let it lapse, but between the feedback and then the additional gathered information, and then also I'd like to understand again how it's going to be rolled out to the staff, what kind of development it's going to be. I mean, I realize that like you said, it's kind of plug and play, but plug and play and use of a software is much different than how you're actually incorporating that into your teaching style. So, Trina, how do you feel about the timeline of it?
I just want some more both qualitative and quantitative data. I see that districts near us have used it and they see positive results, but I just want to see more quantitative and qualitative data around the product. I agree, the student input around it I think is really, really important. I see both. I can see both perspectives. I can see it as definitely a great tool for teachers to want to use when I put on my educator hat. But I also understand what you were saying, Laura, about particularly students with IEPs and 504s and how what they're doing on their Chromebooks could look a little different than other students. And also, Dr. Weston, you brought up a good point of how it looked like everybody was in their silos, and the engagement piece of them engaging with each other, not the engagement of them being on the right website on their Chromebook. I think those are two different levels of engagement, and I think you're more like me. You want to see more of the collaboration with them working with each other. So those are two things that I'm really going to think about and kind of because I was thinking, oh, this might be a great tool, but just listen to the conversation and with Dr. Weston's input, I'm a little hesitant to want to make a decision in October about this resource.
Yeah, that's well said. I mean, in Mr. McGill's examples, that really made sense for that application in an elementary school classroom. But, you know, then what's the middle school experience like? And then what's the high school experience like? Because, again, it's very different, right? You know, there's different engaging, you know, high school kids are not necessarily sitting in centers, but they may have a group thing that they're working on that teachers would want to make sure that if they're over here with one group, that the other group across the room is doing what they need to be doing. So, yeah, I agree with that completely. Yeah. All right. So I think, are we hearing that we maybe want to wait then a little bit, dig in?
I've taken some notes, some questions we'll confer, and then we'll try and gather some additional information and keep the board informed. I'll put some more information in the memo this week from this conversation, and then we'll come back to the board in October.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is this is information on the induction plan. Okay, here we go. So in 2022, the state updated the. Thank you. The state updated school code in order to change the induction requirements. We had just had our induction plan approved prior to that occurring And so the first cohort that's actually impacted is this cohort right now. Our induction plan was a 1-year induction plan previously. So now we have to adjust the induction plan to be a 2-year plan. So we're modifying the current plan, and then we'll be in the process of developing a full-blown 2-year plan to be submitted to the state. So the requirements, these are the changes. So we have to have a minimum 2-year plan. One of the big changes here is the inductee is assigned a mentor for both years, or you can have a longer plan than 2 years, but the inductee has to have a mentor for the entire duration of the plan. 2 years is the minimum of the plan. Now the plan has to be updated every 6 years versus the 3-year plan that was there previously. And approved programs have to include activities that focus on diverse learners in inclusive settings. Required topics, now there are required topics there. Professional ethics framework, that's always something we do in our plan. Culturally relevant and sustaining education competencies are now part of Chapter 49 and a requirement of teacher preparation programs and of induction programs. And the notion of the introduction to educator effectiveness was already part of our plan, but we have to make sure that it is part of our 2-year plan as well. Requiring mentors for 2 years will mean that we'll have to double the number of mentors, so it will have an impact on the budget for the mentors. So if we look over the past 4 years, here are a number of inductees. So this cohort of 27 inductees will then have a mentor again for next year, and then anyone new coming in will have to be assigned a mentor as well. So effectively, looking on average, we'd be doubling our mentor budget. And as per the agreement, this is how much the mentors are making depending on how long they've been a mentor, anywhere between $817 and $1,022 per year.
So the part about the mentors being for 2 years, can you talk a little bit about whether or not it would switch off or they would keep
They
the
do not
same?
have to be the same person. You can have a different mentor assigned each year. One of the things that we plan on putting to the plan is that we would actually take mentors through a stage 1, stage 2 type of training so that they would understand the difference between running induction for a teacher who's new to the district versus someone who needs support in a second year. So we would definitely ramp up our professional development for our mentors in what we do. And there might be that case where, having moving from someone who's a stage 1 mentor to a different stage 2 mentor would be appropriate as well. But that'll be part of our study as we're putting our plan together to see what the best recommendations and arrangements would be.
Okay. So it wouldn't be preferential. You will have a recommendation about consistency, or it would be.
We're not sure yet. We have
Oh,
to
you're not
take
sure.
a look
Okay.
at what this what this looks like and what the best
Gotcha.
arrangement would be. And depending on your subject area,
Pros and cons in
there
either,
are lots of
right.
pros and cons
Sure.
around what this looks like. And so this is our timeline so that we would have this ready for approval by June as we go through the entire process. The state does have not prescriptive, but a set of suggestions on how we go through it. So we are looking at how the state recommends we proceed through in order to put together the proposal that will come before the board. So there's no action required at this point. This is information only. And if there are any additional questions.
I think it's exciting. I think it provides good benefit for both the folks coming in, right, that they're not all alone, and then also for our folks that have been here. And I guess part of that, which I don't know where it would fall, is there like not a vetting process, but kind of like a match making?
Yes, actually, there is a matching process
Okay.
that leadership.
Not everybody gels, right? Like you have to kind of.
There's a matching process that leadership uses right now,
Okay.
and this year I did have the great opportunity to spend a lot of time with the mentors. Fantastic group of committed people who really believe in the mentoring process. They ask a lot of great questions. They brought up a lot of wonderful scenarios
Passion for
around
them to
how
be a
to
mentor, yeah. Awesome.
really do their job well. Next, and this should be near and dear to your heart, Ms. White, a visual and performing arts program investigation. Once again, this is for information. This isn't something that has been fleshed out, but it's something we need to start exploring as we are also, later on we'll talk about our comprehensive planning. This will actually tie into that as well. So anecdotally, so we know that we have a fantastic visual and performing arts program, that students are getting wonderful benefits. Our teachers, once again, are well trained, well committed to what they do. But does the program really meet broader needs? So really, that's really the questions are. Does the current program adequately meet the needs of our students? And that's something that we don't necessarily have the answer to, so that's why we have to ask the question. And we're proposing a study that would take place this year in order for the findings to be enacted during the next school year. And being enacted may mean that that year is actually taken to actually do some additional work for implementation as well. It doesn't mean that it would necessarily have an immediate budgetary or programmatic impact. I had to, over the past few days, I've actually met with teachers that had nothing to do with this, but some of our music and visual arts teachers who are looking at planning some fantastic things, but it was whether those things were actually looking toward building a program or they were episodes or one-off types of courses. And we want to ensure that the things that we do are actually providing a set of pathways. One of the things that I know we don't have in the high school necessarily is what we'd call a major. So if we have students who are identified early and they are looking at the arts, and can they pursue the arts more vigorously within our programs? Out here in the county and the suburbs, we don't have the advantage of, like in Philadelphia, you would have a visual and performing arts school, a creative arts high school, or a GAP or something where students who have expressed those interests can go and get deeper learning. And so those are the things we want to be able to take a look at to see what might be able to be provided. And so that's why we want to put together this study. This would be a broad-based study. We would bring in community members, we would bring in folks from the arts, we'll bring in students, get all types of voices involved here around making the types of recommendations that are the right size for the district, and we'll look many years down the line.
Fantastic. Thank you for listening, and also coming back with everything that you just said. My question about the study is, you said about bringing in community members, maybe making it kind of like a task force type of thing. I'm wondering how the data will be gathered per building, because you mentioned the conversations that you've had. You see that there are great things happening, but everything is kind of in its own silo right now, observationally. And, obviously strength and also growth, progress is in the collective, right? So that everybody's kind of chiming together. I see what I did there? Chiming, music. Okay. So I'm wondering how that data will be collected, and then also how often, like of what the target points would be for analysis.
Right. So, some of these will be committee decisions as well. So we have to put together a leadership team, develop those initial, we have some initial questions, but we actually have to have a team develop those questions as well, and the team develop the process. When we go through the inquiry, of course, we're going to use surveys, we're going to use focus groups, we're going to, use technology as much as possible to gather information. I was in a class last night, and teachers and students being asked the same question came up with two very, divergent answers for the exact same thing. So, that's really important. We may get to the end and say, there's not really much to do, we can do a few tweaks. Or we may get to the end and say, wow, we really need to rethink a lot of things.
Or what type of leadership are we missing, or what are we not seeing, or what are we not capturing?
Is there a big picture that we're not seeing that we want to be able to see? And so the process has to kind of lead the process in some ways, and who we put together on that committee will help us to develop what that will look like. Of course, our curriculum leadership will be there, and as well as our department chairs leading the process as well.
Yeah, and subject matter experts, I think, is a crucial component of it, right?
100%. And we have, we keep leaning in on, we have Versailles College right here that has an arts program.
Right.
And
what other districts around us are also doing?
Who's doing what?
Right. Sure.
Talking to the teachers, they haven't been out in other districts to find out what those programs look like. So
a lot of
they don't know
right.
even how to create a vision necessarily for what a great program should look like.
But they may have professional relationships and connections, especially because of this particular, vertical. I think that there's a lot of collaboration among districts.
And we have teachers who are organizational leaders
right.
Within their local organizations, state organizations, so they do have the ability to get to the resources in order for us to ask really good questions.
Thank you.
Yes. So once again, we want to have this to the board by May, because then we'd have a little bit of time in between before we have to think about what we're going to do for the next year and the types of recommendations that are going to come out of this. Essentially, what comes to the board will be a set of proposals for us to react to, and then say, here's what we can take, and here's how we're going to create programming for the district. No board action required on this. This is information, but are there any other questions around this?
Have you gotten a sense that there was any enthusiasm or excitement, or what kind of feedback did you get when you started to put out feelers about this?
Excitement.
Yeah.
Because we're paying attention to something that sometimes gets marginalized. It happens throughout the district, but some of the feedback was, yeah, this is the first thing to go. That hasn't happened here, but that is kind of what the attitude is. There was just something that was an example that a teacher gave, that a student was pulled out of one of the arts classes to do something else that was necessary for the student, but that was where they went first. That they went to the art class in order to take that student out to give them their intervention.
Could you repeat that, please, Mr. Mitchell? The anecdote you just gave there?
That a student was pulled out of an arts class in order to do something that they had to do. So it was an intervention that they went to at that point, and they missed a period of art.
Basically devaluing that time in the arts class.
And that is often what happens. It is not necessarily the most frequent thing that happens, but it can happen. It can be, well, if we don't want to miss an academic moment, and we don't necessarily see the arts as being as academic. That may not be always the prevailing thought, but it often is when we're thinking about the things that get moved, cut, marginalized first. We go to the arts and athletics and those things which add richness to the students' lives, and often are those things which some students are going to thrive in ways that they may not thrive in the traditional academic spaces.
It's important to move past the 3 R's.
100%.
I really like this study. I think that we're really going to see a lot of children and adults excited about it, and if this is the direction that we move in, I think we're going to have a lot of children who would be interested. I know you talked about a major, possibly having like this major that kids could kind of focus on. I think you're going to see a lot of students enrolling in those types of classes, because I think a lot of students would want to do more of this if they had the opportunity to do it during the school day. So I think this is a great study, and I can't wait to see like what information and data and stuff comes out of this. This is really good.
We're really excited for it. And I do have to give a district shout out, and this is my own personal story, that my son is a junior at Temple now. He's a musical theater major, and I was interacting with someone who was a volunteer here, who's a PV graduate, who's in the arts, and she's the one who introduced us to his coach. She met with him fairly frequently in order to coach him into the musical theater program he's in. So that was PV having an impact on my life through the arts several years ago. So this is a big
and the
deal.
avenues and the opportunities that are available to kids with the correct type of support
Correct.
is really remarkable.
Yes.
Dr. Weston, how do you feel about the study? Do you have questions about the study, or do you think that, to me, I don't think there's any downside. What's your opinion on it?
No, my computer just died, so I lost the slides. But I was a little concerned about what the point of view was for the inquiry starting off. Is it looking to improve and expand, or is this kind of a budgetary thing where we can see what to cut back on? And my own background, I was a band kid, I was a choir kid, I was a drama kid. I want to see these opportunities made available to as many students as we possibly can. I'd love to see every student be involved in the arts. And so if the goal is to identify how to expand and improve opportunities, then I say, yeah, I'm all for that. I'm interested in, your first step is to, put together a set of questions for study. I'm wondering, who's going to be involved with that? How are you going to pull those together? And hopefully you'll be keeping us informed here as to specific questions that you'll be looking at.
Yeah, 100%. Our humanities supervisor, she will be helping to lead the charge here, and so this will be firmly in her camp, and with my support, administrative support, in putting all those things together.
Dr. Weston, so to your point, in my support of this type of initiative, which is really so much bigger than it's just so exciting to me to have the attention put on something that has the potential of such growth and really can be a cornerstone, of what PV is all about, culturally. And when you talk about doing school differently, not having it just be about core subjects it's in line with what we really strive to be all about. So Dr. Weston, to your point, my support of this is in line with expansion and creating more opportunities and more pathways to things that maybe we currently can't offer. And I also think that it will help repair some of the COVID slip that happened in the arts program, specifically through the experiences that were limited by allowing the kids not to have those one-on-one interactions for that window. Because I know foundationally there was some suffering, in terms of enrollment numbers at the elementary level starting out, going into middle school, being middle school musicians, and then now in the high school. And that can be seen in our group sizes, with instrument playing, for example. The other thing that I wanted to ask Mr. Mitchell is just to also, as the development of the team is put into place, to make sure to engage the music boosters, because of the fact that we are very fortunate at PV, in the absence of this type of district level oversight, to have advocates within our community that really champion really basically the entire program.
100%.
Thank you. Mr. Leggett, do you have anything?
No, I think that was comprehensive, and like I said, I think it is important that we do look beyond the 3 R's.
Yeah.
That there's a lot more to what goes on in this building and what it takes to form an educated student. And looking beyond that and embracing that, I think, is an important thing for us to do.
Thank you. So both of those lead into this and our next topic as well. So every 3 years we have to enter into our process of comprehensive planning, and so we're looking now at the 25 to 28 plan. So as I said, it's every 3 years. The plan has to be developed, and then it has to sit for commentary for 28 days before it gets approved by the board and then submitted to PDE. As we take a look, the current plan, we're in the 3rd year of the current plan, the 22 to 25 plan. These 4 goals were the priority goals that were set, and there's been progress toward these goals that we'll talk about a little bit, but we'll come back to this, because one of the things I want to make sure is that throughout the year we are coming back and visiting this regularly, so that this is an ongoing conversation and not just a report at a single point in time. So we do have in what we're going to do over the next couple of months, so this year we have some goals that we have to complete, but we do need to take a look back at what has been done and what hasn't been done, so that we can ensure that we've closed out some things from the previous years and identify anything that needs to be corrected early in this year in order to meet that 3rd year set of targets. And then, as I said, give the board regular updates on how we're going to close out this current plan in the midst of developing the new plan. When we're looking at the comprehensive planning process, here's what it looks like from the state level, what they say in the process, that's setting direction, assessing need, creating plan, implement, monitor, adjust your course, a fairly typical set of ideas. When you're looking at what they're saying that is important in the planning process, this is directly from the state website. One of the things that the state has implemented is this Future Ready Comprehensive Planning Portal. So now it's not just as simple as giving you a template and you fill in the template based on a few prompts. So this portal now ties into the Standards Aligned system, and there's a little more sophistication around it and some monitoring tools in the template as well. So it should be a great boost in this process. One of the things that we, coming in, been here, this is week 8, and week 8 in thinking about this for the district. Comprehensive planning from a state level, from a state perspective, is one thing. Strategic planning that encompasses a comprehensive plan from the state is something else. And so we really do have to start thinking about both of those things together, because the comprehensive plan from the state is really limited and narrow in its scope and doesn't necessarily get into all the areas that we need to think about. So as we're going through this process, we'll think about what are the other areas that we need to ensure are being informed by this comprehensive planning process, so that we can have a better systems look at facilities and operations and other things, and how they're impacting the ability to execute the comprehensive plan. So there are some things that from the state timeline, we're actually a couple of steps behind, and that partially had to do with my timing and coming in, so that we're a little bit behind in the things. But I met with one of the technical assistance folks today and said, hey, we're going to get you caught up in everything we need to do. And really the timelines, your timelines, except that submission date of March 31st, that is not my timeline, that is their timeline. So we'll be a little bit accelerated in things we'll need to do in order to meet the state's requirements in putting together a comprehensive plan. But as I said, we're going to make sure we're looking more broadly, because there will be questions that come up from the comprehensive plan that we may not actually put in the plan, but will need to be put into a broader plan for us to consider. So once again, this was information. This is what we have to get started in, putting together the team in order to do this and to execute it well. This is for information. There's no action required, but open to questions around this process and how we're going to put together a team, inform the team, and go through this state template. No questions, so we will move on to the next. And this actually does fit into our old goals and the new goals we want to think about. My background, I'm a STEMist by background, training, trade, all the things I've done over the past few years. And these two areas around math acceleration and 8th grade algebra have really been something that I've been able to focus on for a lot of years, a lot more years than I want to admit. And this is, when we're thinking about this, this is also one of these flashpoints that comes up in a lot of different discussions. And over the past few weeks, I've had more conversations with elementary parents than I'll probably have at any other time of the year around acceleration and how we do acceleration, and whether, so if a student didn't get into an accelerated pathway, what does that mean for them? The reason we need to do a study on this is because this is one of the areas that's most inconclusive around what is effective and what is impactful. But one of the things that we do know is that math plays an outsized role in students' trajectories and students' opportunities. And whatever we do, we want to make sure that we're doing it right and very thoughtful. It's not reactionary. It's something that we're looking at, that there's nothing that's on the table, that nothing that's off the table for consideration. That we want to take a look at. This is not just about curriculum and instruction. It is about the philosophies that we're putting together in order to make sure that as students are coming through, we have a right-sized math program that allows them to reach a set of competencies, not a set of courses, but a set of competencies that will serve them for the decisions they want to make and are able to make, for a lifetime. Math, as it is currently constituted, is very it's one of the hardest areas to break some of the mindsets around who deserves to be what and where at any particular time. And that's what we really want to work on. And not saying, that our data here are really interesting. That's probably the best way to describe what I'm seeing. It's interesting data that is not, it's not atypical. It's what we see in other places. So PV is not necessarily out of step with the rest of the world, but being in step with the rest of the world doesn't necessarily mean we're serving students well. And that's what we want to consider.
So I have a question about that. The stuff. Maybe I'll wait until after you go through the other
Good.
slides.
Yeah, there's not a lot of slides here because
Okay.
it's really, I mean, there's a couple things. So the critical
that
question
already,
is,
right.
do the current pathways of math, and we do put students on pathways, but the pathways as we describe them, do they serve students' long-term academic needs? And long-term really means that we have to take a look beyond 12th grade and beyond that spot of where students end up and how they're faring and how the math programming may have an impact on that as well. And there are tools we can use to do that, but we want to investigate as much as possible because what happens in 4th grade matters 8 to 10 years later. So the proposal is to study the options to right-size acceleration and how we think about acceleration and that notion of 8th grade algebra, how we want to think about that target, because that is an important target as long as we're calling it algebra. And that's also something that we want to consider as well, because there are there are places that are moving away from or have moved away from and use a more comprehensive math program, and whether or not that's something we'd even want to consider as well. So once again, it is a study to think about what is best as we're moving forward in order to ensure that we're thinking about acceleration properly and that target, which right now is an 8th grade Algebra 1 target. But there are some actions that we need to take that are not necessary, that have no board action that are attached to them, but they are the right things to do this year because we want better communication, better data transparency. We want families to be more empowered around the types of decisions that they are able to make. And so our acceleration program or acceleration process isn't as transparent as we want it to be. So that's why we get questions at the end of the process instead of earlier on. So we're going to share more information around how this works and share that progress toward those targets for our families. We use and when we did the assessment presentation, right now there's still this assessment at the end, the 4th to 5th grade link it, or it's a 5th grade link it assessment that is that last screener that we use in our portfolio. But if we know that if we know that we have a narrow band of students who are actually eligible, but we're still giving this as a universal screener, we're actually not necessarily treating all of our students in ways that they should be treated in the classroom. So if a student who is struggling with mathematics is now being given this screener that is an end of 5th grade screener where we know they will not be familiar with the information or can't handle the information, it's not really doing anything for us or them because it's not useful information around their progress. They may be fine on grade level, but they're not in a position of acceleration. And so that adding an opt-in provision means that we've communicated with families early enough so that if there is a student who the data would show that the student may be not necessarily where we think they should be or where they would be close to that, but the parents say, hey, we want the child to be assessed because we think that we can, that assessment will show us something different. We'd like an opt-in instead of a universal for students who wouldn't necessarily fit the current acceleration profile as we are looking to modify what that program looks like going forward. So the action steps around here beyond this and the study, our new STEM supervisor, Kevin Handerhan, he'll be coming at the end of the month. I want him to have his signature on this. This is part of his interview questions. This is an area that he actually has some strength in as well that will help us to develop well. And so this was for information. I wanted to be able to talk about those actions because I think those are very important for our families at this point in order to have more transparency around how the process works. So now, if there are any questions around this.
Appreciate it. The question that I have is whether or not the study will be where you will be starting by way of like a baseline in the study. Are you starting kind of from scratch with your analysis, or are you gathering new information, or are you really going to be looking at the historical data of all of this, like STAR testing, for example, to see what kids, for example, are on a track of acceleration versus ones that maybe have comparable test results, screening results, but yet are not on an accelerated course? Like, is that the idea that you're going to be just analyzing and looking at data that already exists, or are you looking to do it kind of in real time?
Well, a lot of this will be some historical analysis because we do have to take a look at So we have students who we know have graduated through an accelerated, and we've been doing this for a while.
Right.
So we have years and years of data that we can take a look at. And so going back and looking at who those students are and whether or not there were students who, sorry, I'm about to start getting my math rambling mind going on. But yeah, we have to do a good historical analysis. We have to do some analysis around, when other students were accelerated.
Yeah.
And what did that acceleration look like? What did the success look like at those different points in time?
And what provoked it?
What provoked it? What preparation was there? I mean, so there's some things which are just data that we'll be able to look at, which are, the empirical, we can track students. There's some that we're going to have to go back and talk to students and families as well.
Right.
We have to take a look at, to see how this looks across different groups.
Demographically.
Demographically, I was having a conversation with Joan Aducci about this, and what does it mean for students who are identified, who do have IEPs, and whether or not we treat them the same way in a math class,
Right.
whether or not they have an IEP, which are really important things, because perception in math matters a lot. If nothing else, we found out in research, the math perception matters. And and I'm going to use the word deserves, who deserves to be in a particular spot at any time is still something that's very strong within the STEM community, but in the math community especially.
Right.
And so that's something we really need to take a look at and be really critical around the culture that we're building and the culture that exists, and how we may need to make some shifts in that culture in order to ensure that more students are getting to a spot that is allowing them to really have real choice. If the math program eliminates real choice for students and families, then that's an issue. I don't know whether it does,
Right.
but we have to study it in order to determine that.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I just was thinking as you were explaining it all that part of the conversation that we've been a part of and we've had over the last several years is really around some of the gifted curriculum and identification of students that have GIEPs, for example, which really I know it's not viewed as exactly the same as an IEP, but it is a differentiated need to learn.
Yes.
And so, my questions are always when we don't see, we have the reports annually about improvement in math or improvement in whatever the metric is. Sometimes there's no room to improve if you're already testing at the top of a scale, and how many of those kids are falling through the cracks, so to speak, with regards to potential for enrichment and acceleration. And so that to me has been a question that I've been, we've been having conversations about for a couple years at this point. So, to see that it's going to be a math study, I think is fantastic. It's a great first step. And I guess my part B question to that is, what about ELA? Because I feel as though, although we do have an accelerated path of learning for math, not having leveled ELA is, I think, also a detriment to the overall wholeness and success of certain learners.
And so, yeah, an ELA study doesn't quite fall the same way as a math study.
It's a little different, and just because of what it is, I understand, right?
Right, I mean, but part of it is that decisions start to be made based on math before they are for ELA.
Right.
So in the rest of the classes, we're still heterogeneously grouped. Mathematics is where we start to differentiate students, and that changes perception of who they are. And actually, it gives, there are actually, tangible outcomes that we can talk about around, single, double acceleration, what those things look like, and, what those end goals actually start to look like for students, and whether or not that double acceleration is meeting needs, or we're exhausting students early, and they're saying, hey, I'm going to opt out because I'm done at this point.
Yeah.
So, but
That might have been my lived experience with that.
So those are things that if we don't ask the questions, we won't know specifically for this district, and there's enough, there's enough data for us to mine in order to find out lots of good things that will help us to make good decisions.
So exciting.
I was going to say something, I'm trying to remember, but I really feel like this study is going to really look at this through a DEI lens. I see that a lot with just the things that were listed on the previous slide. And I guess my question was, can you explain the opt-in you talked about would the parents would be able to just say, hey, I want my child to be in the accelerated program?
Not be in, but
Or participate
to
in
participate
it?
in that last exam in order to,
Got you, okay.
as a qualifier.
Okay, okay.
And as we take a look at the programming, you know, there's a lot more to be done there with pathways to get into acceleration that we just haven't done yet, but they're right there to do. You know, things that I know other people do, we've developed in other places, and so it's just really being more thoughtful around, you know, not just saying yes or no at a particular time, but it's, you know, well, let's develop a little bit more, and right now is not the time, but here's you're going to still be able to get to as long as we go through these pathways to do these things.
Yeah, I'm excited about this initiative here. I think that's something that is a very important thing to be looking at, is how we progress kids in math and how we identify kids for math instruction. In my experience, it seems like math is something that kids get tracked into from a very early age, and it's very hard to break out of that track once you're in it. I know with my own son coming through PV, he struggled with math in elementary school, did much better in middle school, but we still had to really advocate for him to get into an algebra class in 8th grade. And once he was in, he did great. He did fine through 8th grade algebra and then on through high school. But I feel like there's a lot more kids that could benefit from earlier algebra instruction and more accelerated math instruction than actually have the opportunity that are actually given the opportunity for that. And that goes for gifted instruction too. I think there's a lot more kids that can benefit from that sort of instruction than are given the opportunity to participate in it. So no, I really think this is something that is an important thing, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about it as you progress with it.
I'm definitely looking forward to working with the board on this. I do think this is, you know, of the things that probably get me up in the morning and keep me up at night, this is one of them. So I think this has an outsized importance.
I'm sorry. I didn't
No,
mean
go
to-
right ahead.
okay. The other thing I think about is, you know, once you get into high school and you're learning more advanced math, you know, what kind of math instruction do kids really need and what do they benefit from? We kind of look at calculus as the gateway to a more, for want of a better word, for a more elite educational experience. But, you know, really, is calculus something that most kids need for that, or is it just a checkbox that's like a filter? I think there's a lot that we could be looking at in terms of what kind of math benefits most students.
And those are the questions we have. The system doesn't get queried much. That we depend upon, you know, these sequences of events being, you know, there's a mythology around it almost, and it's not that we have to undo the mythology, but we just have to think right about the decisions that we're making and whether or not we're creating structures that really do allow that fluidity for students, and really do recognize that students should be able to progress in a way that keeps more options on the table than excludes them from options. And at the end, that if I've gotten to the spot that I can make all these decisions instead of I've gotten to the spot and I can only make these decisions because of the structures that I went through. And that's ultimately what we want to make. We want to try to ensure that math is not that universal gatekeeper, cattle shooter, or however you want to describe it, that's going to limit student opportunity.
I mean, I almost started crying the last set of slides. So this is like a whole, yeah.
All right, and so we're going to get through this
know.
last one really quick and wrap things up because, so this ties into mathematics, something that we want to be able to do kind of right away. The PSAT 10 and the PSAT, these are tests that are given, but right now they're voluntary. And one of the things that an opportunity that we're missing without the PSAT 10 is there's something called AP potential that's tied to this. There are lots of data points we can get from students taking the PSAT early. One, they get practice. It does become an equity issue that students actually start getting into this testing mode earlier. Excuse me. But it also, there are lots of tools, lots of data that then come back to the school around who the students are. And the AP potential is one of those things because it starts to recognize students and recommend particular AP courses based on PSAT performance. So it actually starts to create like a flag system. Like, this student based on their performance, they could probably at least score a 3, and this is just, being norm referenced without intervention. If they were just this student prepared as they are right now, taking this course, this will more than likely be their outcome. So using this as more of a universal screener, this PSAT 10, is something that was done in the past. Budgetarily, it was removed, but I'd really like to consider bringing it back. Dr. Fuller, he fully supports this. This is something that he has experience with and thinks it's an important thing to do for the students. And so it's something that we'd like to explore. This notion of AP potential, tying these data points together. Of course, yes, these are all College Board products, but the College Board has developed this into a science around how we can use one product in order to inform another. And that notion of earlier exposure to this. So what happens between the PSAT 10 and the PSAT itself, being able to get into the SAT practice system so that students have a better opportunity to perform higher on that SAT when they start getting earlier exposure to the exam. Oops, hitting the wrong thing here. I'm hitting my own computer. The slide is moving. I'm wondering why the slide isn't moving over here. Yeah.
What's the actual difference between the PSAT 10 and the PSAT?
Just the demographics of who students are taking it. So it's
The same
it's
test?
normed differently, yes. So it is really just sorry, let me not say that. It is the mathematics is a slight step down based on who's taking it. Is normed differently, but it is predictive in the same way.
And then who uses the AP potential tool?
That's what the school would use then.
The
The
school uses.
family and school would be able to use this AP potential tool. And it does more than just look at AP. It looks at the student competencies and creates a profile of who the students are, what some of their demonstrated strengths are based on what they're seeing in the PSAT exam.
And then how is that info used?
Well, right now it's not being used here, but
No.
it would be used for recommendations so let's say that we have students who may not have been considering AP courses, and it would encourage a student to say, well, maybe you'd want to consider this AP Lit course because of your performance here. Here would be your possible performance in that AP course. So it helps to encourage students to take an AP course they may not necessarily take because there's not a data profile before that.
When I'm looking at this initially, it struck me more as a way to kind of steer some students away from AP courses because they don't have the tool is saying you may not do as well, so maybe you should take a different course.
Well, in general, it's used in the opposite direction in order to open up opportunities. I can see what you're saying about the unintended consequence of someone saying, well, I didn't do as well, so therefore I'm not going to go in this direction.
Yeah, I just have a vision of somebody saying, maybe this course isn't for you. Maybe you should take a different course that's not so hard.
So my personal experience with this was in a very different district, where we definitely did this with the intention of opening up opportunities and turn this into a tool for the guidance counselors to use. And the specific goal was to help students see that they could take AP courses because this was recognizing something that we didn't have any other data point to recognize. And because of the courses they were in, they wouldn't necessarily be in a prerequisite course to an AP course. So this would now be a flag to say, even though they were in this course, which was not an AP prerequisite, they still should be on this pathway to take this course in 1 or 2 years.
Okay. And to what extent are we just identifying students who tend to do well on standardized tests like this?
Right.
'Cause I think it's very much a learned skill, and if you get to be good at it, then this tool is going to show you're going to be good at other standardized tests as well.
I can't argue with that, but that's also why students need more experience in those tests, because the more experience you have in the test and you learn the rules of the game and how to navigate them. I mean, the reason that if I'm want to enroll my student in a SAT prep course is so that they understand how to navigate that particular testing environment and do better in that test. But without having experienced the test, then once I get into that situation, I'm not going to fare as well. 10th grade, it is an entry point that is a low threat threshold. 11th grade, there is actually something attached to it, that there are scholarships. That's the national merit that starts to be opened up at that level. So getting experience in the test is an important thing to do. Are there other questions around this?
What time of year or month would this be given?
October.
October.
So
it's
it's
very early.
We have students who are already registered because our families register individually for this exam.
Great. And that gives you plenty of time to plan out.
We still have
the
time
other
to plan.
2
We still have
years.
time to plan out to kiosk the students, shut down, and give it in a testing environment.
And I think I ask this every year at the assessment presentation. We're talking about paying for students to take the PSAT 10. Can we also pay for students to take the PSAT and AP courses?
You mean the SAT in general?
No.
I'm focusing more on AP.
On AP courses.
But
yeah, we've had
hey,
that.
if we can pay for SATs as well.
I just was.
I think
wanted
that's.
to make sure I heard
I
you
think
right.
that might be a step too far, but
Right.
for the PSATs, which actually can have a tangible benefit to the student as the National Merit Scholarship qualifying test. If we can help kids take these standardized tests, if the payment is a burden, I would love to see if we could help with that. AP, I think we should be paying for because it's part of the course.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dr. Weston, and honestly, we've had a conversation about it. We had actually a student presentation about it as well at one point. Right. But Dr. Russell, I know that if you could just refresh the conversation as you remember it, no, I'm coughing, about when it was free, because it was previously free, correct? There were students that, what was the reasoning? What was the feedback that not everyone took it? I don't want to misspeak because I don't remember correctly.
At one point, we administered the PSAT to all 10th graders and paid for it. And we required AP exams at the conclusion of an AP course, and we paid for those exams, which was really the leverage we used to make sure students took the test as part of an AP, because we also wanted to assess how well we were doing in setting those students up for success and earning a 3, 4, or 5 on the exam. During the years where we had some budget woes, back in the 2010, 11, 12, 13, this was considered low-hanging fruit, and it was pulled from the budget as a cost savings measure, and then students and families were left on their own to have to compensate and pay. And so we sort of moved away from administering to 10th graders unless they would sign up by choice, like 11th graders. However, there was a time when 10th graders took the tests and administration reviewed the data to help make recommendations for AP and consider more rigorous coursework. We used to have a goal as a district. We wanted every student to graduate from high school here having taken one AP course and scored a 3 or higher, at least one AP course and scored a 3 or higher. And then that goal sort of went by the wayside too, because we couldn't require the tests anymore of everyone because they had to pay, and not everybody can afford the costs associated with the AP exams. So some things to think about for us as a district, if we'd like to revisit and go back to some of those practices in the
Yeah,
interest of our
let's,
students.
absolutely, we should. I
Especially
would
for
love to see
families
that.
that take multiple AP classes,
Yeah,
you know.
I 100% agree. We need to look at the AP and what we're asking of our families to go there. I mean, we heard
2, 3, 4 AP classes.
well,
And
that,
then
we've also heard about the increasing need for reduced lunches in our
Yeah.
district. So this is actually a real, there is a burden out there, and there's a burden on several of our families. And from an educational point of view, if we're providing the classes, I think we should give them that last step. Do we need to look at it in some way, whether or not we're going to, how many AP classes does a student take? Can there be percentages that we would pay? I understand it was cut at one time in more of a budgetary, leaner time. Would it be possible to just gather the numbers on, for say, this current year, the students that are in the AP courses, and get a dollar amount to the board and say, this is how much it would cost for us to provide the AP classes for the students that are enrolled, and how many students that is. It should be an easy number to gather, but just from the thought of, let's see what the scope of the problem is now, as we're operating now, because PSAT obviously is made by the College Board, which also administers the AP exams. But the benefit of the AP exam extends so far beyond when they leave the school. The tuition savings, the setting the student up for success beyond here. This is probably one of the single most important things that we can provide that is tangible to them besides the experience that they have here. I think we need to get an idea what the numbers are, so we can, if our philosophy is that you take an AP class, you're gonna take the AP exam, and parents, don't worry. If we're going to move towards that, let's get the numbers to see how practical that might be.
So I guess, you put a lot of weight on the importance of them. I think that weight varies probably based on pathway and college.
Absolutely.
But on that same vein, Dr. Weston, your point about that it's a skill to take a standardized test, the AP is a similar sort of situation. I am not really a steadfast believer of testing for profit. It's a big business. College Board makes a lot of money. So I don't see buying into it for the sole purpose of providing a service. However, I do see benefit to the PSAT for a screener and intervention type of tool and that type of thing. With regards to the AP, I don't know that necessarily the payoff of a class is to be able to take that test and get a 3. Obviously, that's the benchmark that you're striving for success in the class. But to me, that doesn't. The content, the subject matter of the AP content, to me is a more important benefit than the payoff of the test. So if we were to pay for it, I would be curious as to whether or not it would be a mandated, like that's the final.
Yes.
Or if it would be, if you would like to take this test for potential credit, we will pay for it. If that makes sense. Because I think that those are two different things. Some students really feel very strongly about they're going to take this test, they're shooting for a 4 or a 5, and they're going to take it with them. But some colleges, it's irrelevant whether or not.
That's the point I was going to make, because not all colleges take.
Dual enrollment is
but not all colleges take AP classes. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if I'm a advocate of us paying for students to take the AP exam. I do like the PSAT idea a lot better, just because some colleges and universities don't even accept.
No, you're right, especially the
AP.
higher.
They don't accept it, so we would spend money for them to take a test, and then they can't even use it for credit at college because the university they decide to go to doesn't accept the AP credits. So I'm not 100% for
Well,
paying
that's
for-
what I say. I think it needs to be some sort of
Yeah.
conversation about, perhaps there's a formula. We have something where the district contributes to it. Let's say if a student's taking
2 or more.
2 or
yeah.
more, or let's say the first one is 50% parent buy-in, and then the second one we a higher percentage. There's different ways to play with the numbers. I think the first thing that we need to do is assess where are we at now, because we're not going to be playing with. We're not going to be juicing up the enrollment numbers of an AP class because we're dangling. We may pay for this. It's static right now. We can take just a look at it and see where it's at, and play with the numbers and see what we can do for our district. I agree. Not the more elite the school is, they're not looking at AP exams at all. But it's still, I think, for the vast majority of our students, I think it's a useful thing to bring with them. And one last point I would have on that is the AP exams also figure very highly into rankings, and that's not critically important. We need to do what's right for our district, but it is a portion.
What do you mean rankings? You mean like on niche or something like that?
And all the
Oh.
things that whenever it comes out and people
Well,
either
how many
go,
we
look
offer
at
is
this.
irrelevant to who
No,
takes the test.
No, I understand. There's a formula for it.
Well, whether or not we pay for the tests
Yeah,
is irrelevant to how many classes we offer that are AP.
It's irrelevant to the amount of classes that we take. It may not be irrelevant to the number of students that take the classes. In the rankings, it's how many of your 12th graders have taken it as a
Right.
percentage of your population and score a certain amount.
Gotcha. Yep.
Which, if we were to provide
Our number may go down.
our number,
We're up.
yes, or up. Could go either way.
I mean, yeah, it's true. There are a lot of schools, and as you say, especially elite schools that don't take the AP credit. But there are still a lot of schools that do take the AP credit, and the ones that don't, I think, are still interested in seeing what you got on the exam. Harvard may not give you a credit for AP American history, but if you got a 5 on the exam versus you got a 1 on the exam, that they're going to want to see that on your application. So I think it's still an important aspect of it. I'd very much like to see the numbers of what the potential cost would be to support AP testing for all of our students. And then if it's huge, we can look at prorating it some way, like pay for the first test, 75% for the second, 50% for the third, some sort of funding formula. And I think the whole aspect of the for-profit testing industry is maybe a conversation for another day.
1,000%. 1,000. As I guess I was tying that really to the
Yeah,
APs
yeah.
more than the PSATs.
Yeah, I mean, you could get me started on that, and we'd be here all night.
Well, I
but,
think I think we feel comparable way about that. But do you need anything from the board with regards to the PSAT piece of it? Yes. Okay.
Permission to purchase.
So we would move that to present, this is the board of the whole, can we make the decision tonight? How does that work, since there's not enough of us here, we can't really vote? But
We can recommend it to the full
we can
board.
recommend it to the formal meeting, I guess, next month, if that's,
Yes.
I would ask that the committee recommends to the board.
does everybody feel comfortable with that? The PSAT recommendation for the 7,500?
The SAT, yes.
Okay.
When is your deadline, Mr. Mitchell? Do you have a deadline that we have to meet in terms of ordering?
I have to get it from Mr. Fuller, and they
Okay.
know what the deadline is. I mean, we're still within the window, and I think we're good in the window until the end of the month. But
Well, that's like
Ooh.
2 weeks away.
October 8th? Okay.
So our meeting's on the 7th.
I mean, It's all web enabled, so it's pushing a button in order to get it ordered.
The other thing that I could consider doing, if the committee's comfortable, is informing the board in the memo this week and taking a straw poll vote. Does anybody have any opposition to this or reservations about the district committing $7,500 to support all 10th graders taking the test? And we'll explain the reasons why for the benefit of those that aren't here tonight. I mean,
There
we
was
could
one
do
more
that
of us
too.
here, we would have just been able to,
You
I mean,
could
the
have-
4 of us support it.
Right, you could have taken action, but yeah, that's another path we could take.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that.
And then Mr. Mitchell can arrange with Dr. Fuller ordering in a more timely manner. We're not cutting it so close.
Yes.
And the October meetings, we have the work session on the 7th. The board doesn't typically take action, so there's another way that I think we could get some support. Or people could raise their hand and say, no. We'll know that too. We'll learn that too.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you very much.
thank you. That's it. Sorry, that was official. This is the last item. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Excellent.
That's it. Thank you.